to bridge the huge trade deficit, including providing incentives to potential investors and farmers who are involved either in crop, livestock, or even fish farming, supporting local production through protection of local industries, and implementing competitive export promotion strategies, a motion which members of the National Assembly supported, bearing in mind that currently there is that drive in the country to promote the Big Four agenda, one of which includes promoting the local manufacturing sector. The other motion considered by members of the National Assembly is one that speaks to the very heart of this August House, the cervical cancer screening services to all women and issuance of the HPV vaccine to boys and girls by the national government, a motion sponsored by Honorable Dr. Tekla Tum, Member of Parliament, Nandi County, a motion that comes against the backdrop of an increase in cancer cases in the country, and currently the Parliament is actually in mourning following the demise of Kibra, a Member of Parliament, Ken Okoth, and also Bomet Governor Dr. Joyce Laboso, who served in this very Parliament, in the 11th Parliament, as Deputy Speaker. Both politicians, legislators of status in this country succumbed to cancer. This particular motion is anchored on the fact that cervical cancer is the leading type of cancer in the country, causing the greatest number of deaths. Of at least 8 to 10 women are said to succumb to the disease every day, and the Honorable Tekla Tum, in moving her motion this morning, urged that the national government rolls out free screening services to women and also make sure that boys and girls, especially those who are approaching their teenage years, have access to these vaccines to ensure that the threat of cervical cancer in the country is eliminated. This afternoon, a number of bills and motions lined up for consideration by members. One of them is approval of a motion from the Public Accounts Committee on appointment of an accountant to audit the accounts of the Office of the Auditor General. Discussions on this matter have already been concluded, and all that remains is for the question to be put. There is also another motion on the inquiry into allocation of land in Committee Anmar Forest. This debate has also been going on for a while in the National Assembly, and today it shall be continuation of debate that was interrupted last Wednesday in the afternoon sitting. Debate awaits the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of the year 2019, as well as the Statistics Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of the year 2019, and the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of the year 2019. All same as the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23, awaiting the second reading in the National Assembly. The Sectional Properties Bill speaking to provision of division of buildings into units to be owned by individual proprietors and common property to be owned by proprietors of units as tenants in common, and to provide for the use and management of such units. A live broadcast brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. My name is Vereso Mwanga. On behalf of the entire crew, I welcome you to follow the session. Good afternoon.
Tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umerithika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Twakuomba ututeremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na tujalie tuyatende na kuyafikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu, na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amina.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages.
Honour members, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 41, I wish to report the House that I have received a message from the Senate regarding the passage of the National Cohesion and Peace Building Bill, Senate Bill number 35 of 2018. The message reads in part, and I quote, "The Senate on Wednesday, 10th July 2019, considered and passed the said bill with amendments. The Senate now seeks the concurrence of the National Assembly on the said bill in accordance with the provisions of Article 110, Clause 4 of the Constitution. Honorable members, the National Cohesion and Peace Building Bill, Senate Bill number 35, seeks to provide for the establishment of the National Cohesion and Peace Building Commission, outlaw discrimination on ethnic grounds, provide for the establishment of an institutional framework for national cohesion, the peace building, and other relevant amendments. Standing Order number 143, subsection 1, requires the Speaker to cause a bill received from the Senate to be read a first time upon conference of a message from the Senate referring bills to the National Assembly. Accordingly, I direct that the bill be read a first time at the next sitting of this House. Honour members, paragraph 2 of the said Standing Order provides, and I quote, "Following first reading, the Speaker shall within reasonable time pronounce his or her opinion contemplated under Article 114, Clause 2 of the Constitution," close the quotes. The opinion envisioned under Standing Order 143.2 is a pronouncement by the Speaker as to whether a bill originating in the Senate is a money bill in terms of Article 1.
Service for the year ended 31st December 2018. B, the reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificate therein. 1, Ikolomani, 2, Mount Elgon, 3, Malindi, 4, Garissa Township, 5, Bobasi, 6, Pamachoke, Borabu, 7, Pamachoke, Chache, 8, Bonchari, 9, Rongo, 10, Konoin, 11, Embakasi North, 12, Kidunguri, 13, Kapenguria, 14, Turkana West, 15, Turkana North, 16, Loima, 17, Anapkoi, 18, Turkana Central, 19, Marakwet East, and 20, Marakwet West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, July 31st, 2019. 1, the Sectoral Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019, and a petition by the residents of Sabaki Ward, Magarini constituency regarding dispossession of ancestral land. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next, the leader of the delegation to the IPU related meetings held in Doha from 6th to 10th of April, Honorable Patrick Mariro. Yes, Honorable Mariru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to read the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, July 1st, 2019. Report of delegation to the 140th Assembly of the IPU and related meetings held in Doha, State of Qatar, from 6th to 10th of April, 2019. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. For the second time, the Chair, Budget and Appropriations Committee. That report is very important. I will defer to be tabled at the time, whatever time the Chair of the committee arrives. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honourable members, before we move to questions, allow me to recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery, on the public gallery, of students from the following institutions: Githunguri Township Primary School, Githunguri Constituency, Kiambu County; Dege Primary School, Joro Constituency, Nakuru County; Hekima Academy, Kuria West Constituency, Migori County; and those from St. Mary's Primary School, Baringo Central, Baringo County. They are welcome to observe proceedings in the National Assembly this afternoon. First question is by the member for Keses, the Honorable Chel. You have another name, not just Dr. Mishra.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Kiprop.
Kiprop, Arab Chelule.
Honorable Kiprop Arab Chelule.
Yes, sir.
Proceed, Honorable Mishra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to ask the question number 310/2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Industry, Trade and Cooperatives. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary state whether all inspection of the goods agencies operating at the Port of Mombasa possess the requisite expertise to carry out the inspection of goods? Number 2, why was the period of the mandatory inspection of goods recently increased from 4 days to over 4 weeks? Number 3, what measures are in place to ensure there are no incoordinate delays in physical inspection of goods, especially those belonging to blue chip and multinational companies which also possess internationally recognized certification such as CE, European Conformity, and FDA, Food and Drug Administration? Thank you, Speaker, sir.
Very well. Question is referred to the Committee on Trade and Industry and Cooperatives. The Minister will be invited. Honourable members, the next question is by the member for Matayos, who has written to request deferment. I accede to the request, and therefore the question is deferred. Next question is by the nominated member Nashri Sahal Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Honorable Speaker. My question, I rise to ask question 356/2019. My question goes to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Question number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why persons from Wajir, Garissa, Mandera, and Lamu counties face challenges including selective issuances and long delays in acquiring important government documents, among them identification cards and passports. Number 2, what measures has the minister put in place to address the challenges and to facilitate issuance of important government documents, among them identification cards, passport, to the persons from the affected counties? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question is referred to the Committee on Administration and National Security to invite the Cabinet Secretary. Last question is by the member for Suna West, Honorable Masara. Where is
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order number 42A5, I rise to ask question number 357 on 2019 and is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Could the Cabinet Secretary consider appointing a substantive Assistant County Commissioner to the 4 newly established division in Suna West constituency to enhance delivery of critical government services to the public? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
referred to the Committee on Administration and National Security to invite the Cabinet Secretary to respond. Further, let me introduce students and pupils from the following institution: Kirigido Secondary School, Kadara Constituency, Murang'a County; Midakwaini Secondary School, Teto Constituency, Nyeri County; and from Kipsanai, Keyo South Constituency, Elgeyo Marakwet County. You're welcome also to observe proceedings. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, appointment of accountant to audit the accounts of the Office of the Auditor General. Question to be put.
Honour members, debate on this motion was concluded yesterday, and what remains is for the question to be put, which I hereby do. That this House adopts a report of the Public Accounts Committee on procurement of external audit services for the Office of the Auditor General, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, July 25, 2019, and pursuant to provisions of Article 226, Clause 4 of the Constitution, and Section 43 of the Public Audit Act number 35 of 2015, appoints Messrs. PKF Kenya to audit the accounts of the Office of the Auditor General for the financial years 2014-2015, 2015-2016, 2016-2017, and 2017-2018. Will as many as other opinions say aye? Aye. As many as contrary opinions say no? The ayes have it. The Chair, Budget and Appropriations Committee, who appears to have forgotten that the House sits at 2:30 and is making his way at 48 minutes past 2. Kindly, the report you are to table is so important. I think we had agreed that you'll have to table it whatever time you arrive in the chamber. Now that you have arrived not too late, please go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your indulgence. I was in fact waylaid on my way at the gate by a group of senators, and they delayed me at the gate. That's why I was slightly late, and my apologies to the House. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, July 31st, 2019, report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on its consideration of the Division of Revenue Bill, Senate Bill number 13 of 2019. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
If the member for Laikipia County could take a seat, you can sit next to the leader of majority. He is not harmful. Honourable members, before we proceed to the next order, being the motion on the report of the Departmental Committee on Lands on the inquiry into allocation of land in committee and Ma Forest, I wish to issue the following guidance, which relates to its consideration. The member for Emuaya, just remain where you are. No, not where you are. As you are aware, honourable members, debate on this motion had been concluded, and all that remained was putting of the question. However, concerns were raised by members regarding the difficulties that could be experienced by the relevant government institutions in implementing the recommendations as currently contained in the reports. In this regard, honourable members, conscious that the House does not act in vain, I've since perused the report and confirmed that there is need for the House to amend the recommendations part of the report so as to align it with our standing orders and the Forest Conservation and Management Act of 2016. I've also received proposed amendments from a member of the Departmental Committee on Lands addressing this concern. A notice of the proposed amendments is in the order paper for your reference. Honourable members, I therefore wish to invoke the provisions of Standing Order 1 to allow for the amendment to be moved to the report's recommendations. I wish to clarify that debate will only be reopened for purposes of addressing the concerns raised and will not be fresh debate on the rest of the report. Honourable members, once the House concludes with the proposed amendment, I shall then proceed to put the question on the motion. I also urge all committees to be vigilant and ensure that their proceedings stay within the requirements of the standing orders and the relevant laws. I thank you, honourable members. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, inquiry into allocation of land in committee Amner Forest.
Member for Naivasha, Wanjiru Kihara. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to move the following amendment to the report on lands by inserting the following words after figure 2019, subject to deletion of recommendation 1 on page 16 of the report and substitution thereof with the following: that within 60 days of adoption of this report by the House and the furtherance to the provisions of Section 34 of the Forest Conservation and Management Act number 34 of 2016 regarding valuation of boundaries and evocation of public forests, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for forestry initiates the process of degazettement and annexation of land LR number 8390 committee ANMA from committee forest measuring 169.7 hectares for the purposes of settlement of members of the Committee Forest Quotas Association, Committee ANMA Development Association, Muungano wa Committee Group, and Committee ANMA Development Welfare Group. Mr. Speaker, this is a process that we have gone through, and for purposes of rectifying what has not been done, for purposes of normalizing, I would like to ask Honorable Laikipia Waruguru to second the amendment.
Member for Laikipia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the amendment as tabled by the Departmental Committee on Lands that we delete recommendation referring to the Cabinet Secretary Lands and National Lands Commission, the Kenya Forest Service, in regards to the notice for 60 days. We want to believe for this process to be conducted harmoniously, we require to give them a bit of time, and for that reason, for purposes of all stakeholders, we wish to delete that recommendation. I second.
Honour members, if all of us can go to our gadgets, the iPad, you'll see the proposed amendment. And therefore, honour members, I propose the question, which is that the motion be amended as proposed by the Honourable Jane Kihara. Are members aware of they got it? The debate may only happen on the proposed amendment. Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it would be useful if the mover could indicate the import of the change. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is now before the House. We're going to discuss this. I think it's really important that the import be explained. Just of the change.
The Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi, your quarrel is that the member has not explained the import.
The import of this change, yes.
Please, take the mic.
Yeah.
Take the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. There is substitution. We have deleted something that was agreed, and we have added something that is now, I think, more in line with the intent of the mover on this. But I'm saying I think it would be useful for the House if the mover could now explain the import of that deletion and substitution.
Honorable Jane Kihara, would you be desirous of explaining briefly to the Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi the import of your amendment?
Mr. Speaker, this is a report that was debated in this House. Having been, we as a committee of lands, having involved all the stakeholders who wish to have the degazettement of that part of the forest. Mr. Speaker, in committee, there is more human living there than trees. Government funds have been used to build schools, their homes, their boreholes. So in essence, it is just a matter of normalizing and meeting the constitutional requirement, Mr. Speaker.
Honour members, I'll read the proposed amendment in full so that its import may be understood, because the mover also doesn't appear to indicate, so that members can be clear on what it is. And as I've explained in my communication, is merely to make it possible to be implemented by the relevant agencies of government that to whom the report will be directed. And therefore, maybe let me just put the question on the proposed amendment. No, it's not debate. Honour members, you have requested that I put the question. And I put the question that the motion be amended by inserting the following words after the figure 2019. In brackets, subject to deletion of recommendation 1 on page 16 of the report and substitution thereof with the following. That within 60 days of adoption of this report by the House, and in furtherance of the provisions of Section 34 of the Forest Conservation and Management Act number 34 of 2016, in brackets regarding variation of boundaries, or revocation of public forests, in brackets, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for forestry initiates the process of degazettement and accession of land LR number 8390/committee/ANMAO from committee forest measuring 169.7 hectares for the purpose of settlement of the members of the Committee Forest Quarters Association, Committee ANMAO Development Association, Muungano wa Committee Group, and Committee ANMAO Development Warfare Group. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Will as many as a counter opinion say no? The ayes have it. Now, honourable members, having adopted the proposal, the amendment, now what remains was for me to put the question on the motion, which is that this House adopts a report of the Departmental Committee on Lands on the inquiry into a complaint by Committee ANMAO Forest Squatters Association regarding allocation of land LR number 8390 in Committee ANMAO Forest, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, as amended. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, motion. Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the House considers the Senate amendments to the Public Partnership Amendment Bill 2017. And the Speaker, by way of introduction for the members to follow, this bill was passed by the National Assembly on 31st of July 2018 and thereafter conveyed to the Senate in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, the Senate took long and they passed it with amendments on Wednesday, 20th February 2019, after about 7 months. The amendments were later sent to the Finance Committee, Finance and National Planning Committee of this House on 5th of March 2019. Speaker, this bill is important because this is a bill that wants to amend the Public-Private Partnership Act of 2013 in order to recognize county governments as distinct entity as a distinct entity that can contract for public-private partnership projects, that with the guidelines and the law and the support of the Minister for National Treasury, a county government can enter into a public-private partnership projects. And to achieve this, the bill makes provisions for the guidelines to be made by the Cabinet Secretary for this matter, Finance, to facilitate the manner in which a county government may deal with the public-private partnership arrangements. So, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly proposed further amendments to the Senate amendments to Clause 2. The Senate proposed a number of amendments to Clause 2. There's a new Clause 4A, 5A, and 20 of the bill. And the Senate again seeks the concurrence of the National Assembly to the bill in accordance with the provisions of Article 112, subsection 1B of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware that the Finance Committee considered the Senate amendments and the schedule from the National Treasury in order to look at the proposed amendments from the Senate. And I'm happy the Chair of Finance is here. So, Mr. Speaker, as the move of this bill, I'm agreeable to most of the amendments proposed by the Senate, but I wish to thank them for improving the bill for the first time. They have done some very good improvements. However, on 7 of those amendments relating to Clause 2, to Clause 4, to Clause 5A, to the new Clause 20, and to the new Clause 70A, I totally don't agree, and I'm aware the Finance Committee has proposed further amendments to this. And Mr. Speaker, let me just highlight to the House, so that as we go to mediation, what is our bone of contention? Why do we disagree with the Senate amendments? And mediation, Mr. Speaker, is provided for in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Clause 2 of the bill on the term definition, the definition of the term transaction advisor, the amendment is intended to retain the definition as it is currently in the Public-Private Partnership Act of 2013, which was allowing the contracting authority to appoint a transactional advisor and give a unit a statutory basis for hiring that advisor, that associate advisor. However, why we disagree with the Senate is proposing to delete that definition and is substituting it with something else, which is not in line with the current existing act. So, Mr. Speaker, I will be proposing that the new Clause 70A be amended to include cabinet in addition to the ones listed below. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, the justification proposed by the committee considered that the proposed Senate amendments to the Public-Private Amendment Bill and proposes further. So if you look at the order paper, the Committee of Finance is proposing further amendments to Clause 2, to Clause 4A, and they feel that the intention, like Clause 4A, the intention is to have at least 3 private sector members in the Public-Private Partnership Committee that will be formed. And this will enable the committee to draw from critical project-related professionals among engineers, lawyers, accountants, that particular project. So when that committee is being formed, there must be 3 persons that will come from the private sector. The Ministry of Transport, Public Works and Housing has the State Department of Infrastructure and Housing, which are both headed by principal secretaries. Therefore, important for both PSs also to be members of the committee. Clause 5A, Mr. Speaker, that the Senate amendments to the proposed Clause 5A will be amended by inserting the words "before signing a project agreement" immediately after the word "maintain." The reason or the object behind this is that the timing of public participation is crucial to any implementation of large government projects. The public must be involved as stakeholders. So the amendment intends to create and ensure that public participation is carried out before any project agreement is signed. And that's why in big projects like the SGR, Port of Mombasa, roads, energy, when government is building, there are a number of people who go to court and say that public participation has not been done. So this is to make sure that before an agreement on public-private partnership project is signed by government and other private entities, public participation must be exhaustively undertaken. Mr. Speaker, as I give to the chair of the committee to second and give the rest, Mr. Speaker, I received a letter, and this is a matter of mediation. You know, I received a letter from the Law Society of Kenya telling me to attend a mediation that they want to do between the Senate and the National Assembly on the division of revenue. Mr. Speaker, I have the letter here. And already they have appointed a mediation committee from their side, led by a person called John Ohaga, appointed lead mediator. Speaker, I really want to tell Law Society of Kenya that one, you have not read the Constitution. Mediation belongs to Parliament between the two houses. So LSK is not a member of the National Assembly, neither is it a member of the Senate. Two, LSK has enjoined into the case of the governors in the Supreme Court. So they are not coming even with clean hands. So you are there as you have taken us to court on behalf of you are part of the case, and then here you want to come back and mediate. Secondly, you are inviting the Speaker of the National Assembly and Speaker of the Senate. The speakers of both houses do not sit in mediation committees. The speakers of both houses do not have a vote. You know, Ojiende wrote to the Speaker of the Senate on the finance bill. And I said, Senior Counsel Ojiende should have known finance bill has no business in the Senate. Now we have a whole Law Society of Kenya, and the lawyers who are in this house. This society of yours is embarrassing. The lawyers who are here, this is embarrassing you. How can if you are here, please go back, put your house in order, tell your chair that you have no powers, tell us where you drew your powers to write to the leader of majority who drew his powers from Article 108. You know, you can write to Orengo and Murkomen. But for me, my office is a constitutional office. So the society cannot purport to write to me to invite me to a mediation in a hotel when the mediation provided for in the Constitution is for the Speaker to read the members and submit it to the Senate, and the Senate. So LSK Chair and President, Mr. Gishoi, you are leading a team, and the honorable member for Madare is here. I will table and tell Mr. John Ohaga, Alan Wayaki, Lusaka Kenneth Makelo, he is as part of the mediation, Sheila, Peter Kimuyu. At least I'm happy, I hope my speaker is not here. George Ooko, Isa Mansour. At least Isa is one of my lawyers. I'll tell him you have been embarrassed. Steve Ogolo. So they have formed a mediation, and the only person here is the Speaker of the Senate. The Speaker of the Senate has no vote. The Speaker of the Senate cannot be a member of a mediation. Mediation is for members of the National Assembly and the Senate. So, Honorable Member for Tharaka, you are a senior counsel. Go tell your membership. They are behaving like even the guys in my constituency who run cattle deep. You know, borehole association members are doing better. So lawyers, Honorable Member for Madare, you are many here. Honorable Shamala, please talk to them and tell them I will give this letter to the member for Tharaka with my copy and telling them that they must respect the office of the leader of majority. And they should not allow our speaker to be in a mediation. So Speaker, I beg to conclude and say that this bill is going for mediation and LSK has no business. As a leadership, we will elect some people, you will read the names, and you will send to the Senate will get some people, the members, and we'll go to the mediation. And I ask Honorable Limo, the Chair of Finance, who will also lead our mediation team, to second.
Before the Honorable Limo seconds, allow me to recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery of students from Embakasi Girls High School, Embakasi South Constituency, Nairobi County. Those from Kitonyini Secondary School, Machakos Town Constituency, Machakos County. Huruna Mixed School, Mathare Constituency, Nairobi County. Dururuno High School, Mathare Constituency, Nairobi County. Gatodo Gao Secondary School, Mathira Constituency, Nyeri County. And those from Gadaithi Primary School, Githunguri Constituency, Kiambu County. They are welcome to observe proceedings in the National Assembly. Honourable members, just it's good also to make, to put the record straight that, that Article 122, Clause 2, Paragraph A of the Constitution is very, very clear that when dealing with matters of voting in either House of Parliament, the Speaker has no vote. That is categorically stated and clearly stated, and therefore, in a matter that is before the House of Parliament, even if you are to invite the two speakers, they'll merely come and perch at the back, listen and enjoy the tea that you may be providing, or whatever other beverages that you may be providing. Finally, walk out without uttering a word because we are excluded from the process which could result in a vote taking. So it's not useful at all, really, too. And the process of mediation is clearly provided for in Articles 112 and 113. So our role is limited to announcing the names or appointing the people to sit in a mediation committee. This is just to make the record straight so that a few others who may have forgotten to look at the Constitution can go and update themselves. Honorable Limo.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to second the Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill as moved by the Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, our committee considered these amendments and we have actually made some decision to support some of them, and some of them we are moving amendments and some of them we are rejecting. Mr. Speaker, as it is, this particular bill, the amendment bill, was intended actually to bring or to recognize the county governments as an entity in PPP contracts, which previously, of course, was not in place because county governments are fairly new. Mr. Speaker, during the Committee of the Whole House will be moving several amendments, and basically most of the amendments are because the Senate, when considering, some of them we considered as was unnecessary, but because of the normal behavior of the Senate, currently they normally make amendments to adjust to ensure that something has happened, because some of them were actually straightforward, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think our Majority Leader has spoken to most of them, and we will be making some amendments relating to Clause 2, Clause 4, 5A, 20 and 70A, and we will be moving that during the Committee of the Whole stage. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I would not wish to add a lot of information to this, but I just want to support what the Majority Leader has said, that anybody in this country is at liberty to participate during the law-making process, including the LSK, and therefore, they should be coming, of course, during the public participation or stakeholder consultations, but should never wait until when the bill is on the final stages, they want to come in. In law, they don't have any opportunity. It is the same way they are trying to come in Division of Revenue bill. stalemate, which is clearly not their role at all, unless they want to, if they want to do some further public participation, they can do it outside, but they cannot summon the two houses which are recognized in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge also the senators to be very clear in their mind that this House has a role to play as stipulated by Article 95 of the Constitution. They should also read Article 96 where they belong. And indeed, if there are some senators who are wish to be in this upper house, then they should just identify constituency and they fight with the member of parliament who is already there. And if indeed they win, then they come to this house instead of trying to bring side shows. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to second this particular amendment from the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm allowing the member Wilson Sossion to Honour members, I propose a question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017, be now considered. This is for debate. Do I see the Honorable Oluoch desirous of making a contribution? Is it? Sorry. The mood of the House is that I put the question. Since the mood of the question, let me put the question, which is the middle of the House. I put the question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017, be now considered. Will as many as have opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as have contrary opinion say no? No. The nays have it. Next order.
Order number 11, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, second reading.
The Chairman, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I think, honourable members, this is also an important bill that members should pay attention to what the chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Independent Electoral Commission and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill number 3 of 2019 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with you that this is a very, very important bill, and I would request my colleagues to take time so that, Mr. Speaker, we are able to really understand the essence of this amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, the IEBC is one of the Chapter 15 constitutional commissions, as you are all aware. And as per provisions of Article 250, Sub-Article 1, IEBC, and indeed all Chapter 15 commissions, is to have a minimum of 3 commissioners and a maximum of 9. And so the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sets the minimum number of commissioners and the maximum. Mr. Speaker, Section 5 of the IEBC Act sets out the members of the Commission at 7. Mr. Speaker, why I'm giving this background is very important for us to know where we are and where we are going. So that under the IEBC Act, Mr. Speaker, Section 5, the IEBC ought to have
7 commissioners, that is the chair and 6 other commissioners. Mr. Speaker, 4 of those commissioners have since left the commission. And we are so envious that I want to make a very, you are the head of this house, and it is important, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that I don't want this house to be accused, Mr. Speaker, one day, that we left a lacuna in law for too long. Speaker, this issue has 2 dimensions. It is both political and legal. Others will deal with the political issues, including myself and yourself and all of us here. But, Mr. Speaker, the legal issues will be addressed by this House, Mr. Speaker. What we have done today, Mr. Speaker, under your leadership, so that the House, Mr. Speaker, should not be seen to be part of the problem. We want to be seen to be part of the solution to the situation arising in the IEBC, Mr. Speaker. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon my colleagues today that let us rise up to the occasion and be counted as a House, that, Mr. Speaker, shall be able to pass a law that would put in place the legal mechanism, the legal framework of the selection panel. Mr. Speaker, of declaring vacancies available is not for you, it's not for me, it's not for this House, it is for another person, Mr. Speaker. And that will be dealt with at that level. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to plead with my colleagues that let us pass this law, Mr. Speaker, amendment, so that we are counted. Finally, Mr. Speaker, clause 2 of the bill seeks to amend paragraph 16 of.
We would want to hear as many opinions as possible, whether this is a good idea or should it be left to those other bodies that sometimes congregate on Sundays, others on Fridays, and sometimes others in workshops and such like, and tell them those are the people to give you people to carry such an enormous constitutional duty as the functions of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission as contained in Article 88, and more particularly, Clause 4. With that as me, honourable members, I propose a question, which is that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, in brackets number 3 bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, be now read a second time. I imagine that I can follow the order as appears. And the order, this a member who has, I was cracking a joke with him earlier because he has 2 interesting names. The Honorable Mutua Barasa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contribution. And I want to make it clear that I support the amendments. Mr. Speaker, the integrity of any electoral process cannot be overemphasized. And we have lived in this country, Honorable Speaker, where we are told by a few individuals that winning an election is one thing, but being announced as the winner by IEBC is the second thing, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is important that IEBC undergoes reforms, and such an amendment, Mr. Speaker, is part of the reforms that this House should support. But, Honorable Speaker, even as I support, I will want the committee to go beyond what they have just done today, because we've seen scenarios where when we are nearing the general election, and some people, Honorable Speaker, and I will want to see, and I will try to see whether it's possible to bring in some amendments so that we make it not possible for a commissioner to resign from his or her position, at least when we are remaining with at least 1 year to the general elections. And if such person resigns, then the resignation should be suspended until a further date, Honorable Speaker. But I want to appreciate the reasoning of the committee the reasoning of the chair, especially in coming up with a selection panel, so that the appointment of commissioners is not going to rest on the shoulders of an individual or one organization, that we are going to tap into the intelligence of different people that are drawn from various institutions to be able to give this country commissioners who are going to reflect the integrity that Kenyans expect of the electoral body, Honorable Speaker. It is very important, and all of us understand that the integrity of the whole electoral process has got a lot of things to do with the individual credibilities and the integrity, Honorable Speaker. And we should even, going forward into the future, we'll even explore bringing more amendments, Honorable Speaker, so that if a particular person fails to announce the person whose Kenyans have given a mandate to lead this country, then such person should, the penalty should be very, very high to discourage, so that we run away from the notions and the rumors that, that in this country is not the Kenyans who decides who becomes the leader. We talk of things in quotes like system. You wonder, what is system? So we must really ensure that we insulate the IEBC from manipulations by people that I may call criminal gangs, because if you want to manipulate a constitutional body like IEBC, then you are a criminal. So we must insulate IEBC from manipulations, from the so-called system and anything else. And I want this House to debate this matter soberly, so that we do not want to pass laws that serves interests of certain people, but we should pass laws that are going to ensure that this country will go through a process that is both verifiable, a process that will give a true reflection of what Kenyans will have spoken through the ballot, Honorable Speaker. With these very few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Wamalwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this amendment on the IBC Act. Mr. Speaker, as you clearly put it, Article 88 of the Constitution is very clear in terms of the core business of IBC, to conduct elections, to conduct a referendum, and for continuous registration of voters. Mr. Speaker, I listened carefully about the selection panel. We know very well, Mr. Speaker, that the current chair of IBC, the current commissioners, they came into place because of the selection panel. Unfortunately, the selection panel, upon appointment, it gets dissolved. And I'm happy to note that in the current arrangement, Mr. Speaker, the selection panel will stay there forever, so that in case of any situation of vacancy arising, this selection panel will continue being there, Mr. Speaker, to be able to conduct interviews. Because, Mr. Speaker, IBC being an important body, it cannot just be a place of walk in, walk out. It cannot be a toilet, Mr. Speaker. We are aware the commissioners that were there, Mr. Speaker, some of them walked out. After 3-4 months down the line, you see them coming back with their handbags as if it's a toilet. This cannot be entertained, Mr. Speaker, and if you've not gone on duty, it is important that you must be replaced, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, IBC plays a very important role as far as elections are concerned and representing the sovereignty of the people. Mr. Speaker, how I had wished that it was based on the IPPG model, the inter-party parliamentary group, which was there before. But I know if I told the BBI you're going to have a referendum or whatever, here are some of the things some of us had proposed, that the IBC should go the inter-party parliamentary group, the way it was initially. Mr. Speaker, the big players, when it comes to the general election, they are the political parties. And it's important because these political parties, Mr. Speaker, are the players in the elections. And it's important for political parties to have been given a position when it comes to nominating these particular commissioners. Mr. Speaker, I know there's the issue of the Parliamentary Service Commission that is supposed to nominate the 4. But how I wish, Mr. Speaker, we shall have clarified this, because it might bring some confusion and bring some abuse. We've talked about the issue of the gender, that we must have 2 male, 2 female. But in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, we have the majority side and the minority side. So, Mr. Speaker, my humble request submission here, because you are the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission, when you talk of the 4, we have clarified in terms of the gender, how I wish that we had also clarified in terms of majority and minority. Because that's actually very, very important. And it plays a critical role when it comes to forwarding commissioners to the Parliamentary Service Commission. But the chair only mentioned the issue of 4, 2 male, 2 female, the issue of the gender. But because we are political parties, and under the current system of governance, this presidential system, we have majority and minority. If possible, Mr. Speaker, if you allow, when we go to the committee of the whole house, if we could amend for purposes of clarity, because if we leave a loophole, Mr. Speaker, and we have rock commissioners coming on board, I'm not saying you are rock, Mr. Speaker, of course you are the chair. Somebody might decide and say, because there's no clarity, we can pick all of them from majority side or from minority side. Mr. Speaker, another issue about the church. And I know an amendment has been done. In the previous provision, we had more provisions for the church. And why the church is because we seem to have trust and faith that the church will not be biased in terms of interviews. But now that we've given 2 slots alone, Mr. Speaker, but we have very many organizations, faith-based organizations in this country. We have, for instance, the NCCK. We have the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. We have the Pentecostal churches, Mr. Speaker. We also have the Muslim, Mr. Speaker. So how I had wished, Mr. Speaker, that because we have at least 4 major ones, we should have given 4. Now, at the moment you give 2, there's going to be a scramble. It's going to also bring some divisions. And where we come from, Mr. Speaker, majority of the people here, we have trust in the church. They might do mistakes here and there, but we know they are people of God, and most of the time, whatever they put across, they are likely to have a consensus. The issue of bias, when we have a religious institution, Mr. Speaker, it's a bit minimal. I'm questioning other commissions like ESCC. What is the ESCC coming to do here, Mr. Speaker? Because there's a provision that Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has to nominate someone. Why? Because theirs is to focus heavily on matters of corruption, economic crimes. But when it comes to issues like elections, Mr. Speaker, I don't think they should have anything. Because already they have a role when it comes to chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. But now the issue of the ESCC, as we move on, will propose an amendment, Mr. Speaker, so that we remove the ESCC. They should not be given a slot. I don't see the connection why the ESCC should be given a slot, Mr. Speaker, that they should be able to nominate someone to sit on this particular selection panel. On the issue of the public service, Mr. Speaker, we do support, because in many other commissions, we've even been seeing public service doing it. Personally, I would not have had a problem if the selection panel would have even been replaced by the public service and nominees from the Parliamentary Service Commission, because the players, when it comes to the general election, are the people who come here. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the Attorney General, the Attorney General is the chief government legal advisor. Personally, I didn't see much value why it was there, and I listened carefully when the chair of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee was moving. So I expected him to say something. What value, what justification is there that you really want that the representation from the Attorney General should have been there? To me personally, I'm not for that. The LSK, good. We are supporting the LSK to be there, but these issues of the ESCC, the issues of the Attorney General, I'm not very convinced about that. But as we move on, Mr. Speaker, we'll be able to bring in amendments. I'm happy about the issue of within the 7 days, Mr. Speaker, which is very good. Immediately you clear so that you forward quickly. But it's a critical issue, Mr. Speaker, has not been addressed. And when it comes, the selection panel does the interview. There is ranking, Mr. Speaker, position 1, position 2, position 3. And I remember in the last selection panel, we had my friend, particularly from the Maasai community, there were some allegations that so-and-so was number 1. And we are told they can decide who to go. How I wish, Mr. Speaker, we should have put a clause that once they've done the interviews, they've done the ranking, number 1, 2, 3. We should not leave any loophole, not any discretion, that whoever becomes number 1, that should be the name of that person who is supposed to be the chair of that selection panel. The way it happened with the Judicial Service Commission. Number one, once they forward, the president had no discretion to decide whether number 1, 2, or 3, because they are critical players in this game. Otherwise, I support the committee. They've done very good work. But as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, because some of us, we are so keen, we know there's already we have the Punguza Mzigo that is going on. We have the BBI, maybe very soon we are also likely to have. And IBC, one of the immediate likely assignment they're supposed to do is to conduct the issue of the referendum, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Junet says we should oppose the Punguza Mzigo, that because you cannot reduce representation all over the world, it cannot be reduced. You can't turn the counties to become constituencies, Mr. Speaker. That is completely out of order, and you can't come and claim that the wards are supposed to be the way they are, and yet we know very well they have to be, constituencies have to be converted to become wards. It's important that we should look at a bill that has been consulted widely, a bill that public participation has been there, a bill that consultation has been done, has been all-inclusive, like the one of BBI, which is composed of both the opposition side and the government side. So we want bills which are all-inclusive so that we don't have a headache if at all the referenda will be there. I'm not saying it will be there, but if it's going to be there, why not? It is something that some of us really want the parliamentary system so that we have cabinet secretaries come from the floor of this house. We don't want the cabinet secretaries who don't respect parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know I've talked too much, but I support the bill, and we are going to bring some amendments when it comes to the committee of the whole house. I thank you, and I support.
Very well. Obviously, the Honorable Amalo is alluding to something which is a very old cliche, that there's always been a struggle where the citizens have always argued that there cannot be taxation without representation. And that's why in the 2010 Constitution, we have the country saw it fit to dedicate a whole chapter, Chapter 7. Chapter 7 of the Constitution deals with the representation of the people. So when you say that the great people of Turkana will be represented by 2 members in this chamber, it just doesn't. Then why is it people have been yearning for more representation? But anyway, that's I believe that's the point that maybe the Honorable Wamala was alluding to. Member for Tharaka, your county would have 2 members if certain proposals were carried through.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm 100% sure that although Tharaka Nithi has only 3 members of parliament, it would not be comfortable for them to have 2 members whatsoever. In fact, it has more than 3. It has even the woman rep, 4, and others. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the bill on the amendment of the IEBC Act. It is important that we streamline the workings of the IEBC because the country is not certain exactly how the affairs of IEBC are being run, especially by 3 commissioners. Initially, we had 9 commissioners in IEBC. There was an amendment to their act. They became 7. And after 7, there were resignations, and eventually 3 remained. It arose and questions were asked as to whether 3 commissioners would actually sit to run an independent commission. And the commissioners themselves initially were not sure of this. And they were agreeing that they may actually not properly constitute the IEBC. If later on they actually changed their position in accordance with Article 250, and they said that a commission can be run by 3 commissioners. Good enough, that may be the legal position. But when it comes to actual discharge of important duties, especially of an independent commission akin to that of the IEBC, it is important we relook at this and ensure at all times we do have a sufficient number of commissioners who will discharge the mandate as per the Constitution, as per their act, so as to ensure that the services needed in the country are given. it is important that we look into this act and amend so that we now come up with the selection panel. The law should actually be that the selection panel remains standing for as long as the law provides. The idea of the selection panel coming to an end after a recruitment is not suitable for the country, because this is why we are in the problem we are in. That we do have 3 commissioners and we are not able to select 4 or more to sit with these 3 and discharge the duties. Therefore, the proposed amendment is in line with the thinking of the people of Kenya, that we do have a standing selection panel that will always come into play as soon as a vacancy arises in IEBC, and that vacancy is filled immediately and the workings of the IEBC continue unhindered. I'm happy with the proposals we have made, and I got to point out that the Law Society of Kenya is one of the proposed members of the selection panel. I know the leader of majority has cast aspersions on that society simply because he received a letter that possibly he did not read entirely. The functions of the Law Society include advising everybody, the country, the citizens, the government, and even aiding the courts in matters relating to the law. A lot of law is involved in IEBC work. A lot of law is involved in those persons who are supposed to be selected so that they can interpret this law from time to time and ensure that it is complied with, and that member of the selection panel is supposed to fill that gap. The leader of majority has also given me the letter which he told me to return to sender. And the sender appears, he told me the sender is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, but I believe he had not read it because this letter is from the secretary and the CEO of the Law Society of Kenya. Now, the Law Society of Kenya is actually inviting certain persons interested in the Supreme Court Advisory Opinion number 3 of 2019. And what this letter is saying is that it has already convened 2 meetings, invited people of interest to attend so that it can try to mediate or arbitrate or whichever way negotiate and reconcile the parties regarding the dispute, the difference the National Assembly has with the Senate. Now, no mediators and arbitrators have been appointed because what the leader of majority read were actually people who attended these meetings. I think the leader of majority is not happy with the fact that the Law Society is itself involved in the advisory opinion in the Supreme Court. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was in the Supreme Court this morning, and the Law Society of Kenya was clear that they are in these proceedings as amicus curiae. The work is to be on both sides, to listen and advise in a neutral manner, in a manner that does not favor the Council of Governors is no longer a party. It is now to advise the governors themselves because they are the ones who have sought this opinion, and also advise the Senate, which is on their side, and the National Assembly, which is named as a respondent. As far as I'm concerned, the Law Society has not invoked Articles 112 or 113.
Honorable Murugara, you know, it may well be that you want to advise the leader of the majority party, but you see, this one is about the amendment, proposed amendment.
Thank you.
And I thought you went, the reason I allowed you is because I thought you were trying to justify why your committee has recommended that the LSK be involved in the selection panel.
Thank you. I stand guided, Mr. Speaker, sir. I was trying to justify that, in fact, the tirade we got from the leader of majority may not have been factually correct, but I do stand guided. The reason why the Law Society has been included is, as I have said, that we have to give advice both to the government, to the people of Kenya, as far as the law is concerned. Otherwise, as I support this motion, this bill, which I think we should agree we pass, it is vitally important that we now have a properly constituted IEBC for purposes of moving forward and discharging those very important functions which we have enumerated under Article 88 of the Constitution. There is talk of referendum coming up. We do not have any referendum act in this country. There is no statute such as that. So we do not know that whether, if we are to have a referendum, which law we would actually invoke. However, this is the work that the IEBC is supposed to get into, including having a statute that we can actually use for a referendum that is public initiated, parliamentary initiated, whichever way it is initiated through the process like that one of Pungua Mzigo. So with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I do support. Let us move as a house. Let us fill in the lacuna that has existed as far as this law is concerned, and we do come up with a law that will guide the country when it comes to matters election. Matters election are a motive in this country. We know that there have been various conflicts and disputes regarding elections, and therefore it is important we have an IEBC with commissioners that are credible, with commissioners that will be trusted by everyone in the country. And this is why we have said, while the other selection panel was composed of majorly religious leaders, let us just have 2 or 3. The rest of them be from other important bodies that we need in this particular panel. With those remarks, I move to support.
Member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to support this bill from the onset, that we need to constitute an IEBC that is full and can carry out its mandate. We also need to divorce the Parliament from doing its legal work and the politics that we also do. So the Parliament should never stand in the way of what it should be doing, especially in the creation of a legal framework, like the mover of the motion did indicate, so that we seem to be contributing to the absence of the IEBC per se. Speaker, I want to say that currently as constituted, yes, the IEBC would be meeting its minimum threshold of 3. But with 3 commissioners, it cannot carry out its mandate properly, especially the elaborate mandate that is actually put down in the Constitution in Article 88, which you yourself mentioned, among other things, is voter education. And voter education is a continuous, massive processes that may not be carried out by the IEBC as constituted today, together with voter registration. Speaker, as constituted today, the IEBC is a lame duck in a way because it casts aspersions and doubts and credibility by the Kenyans on its ability to perform. As we go through the many processes of by-elections, the Kenyans look at it as a lame duck, and therefore I fully support this amendment. But I would want the committee to listen to only 2 things which I think later on, when we go to the committee stage, we would also put them in as amendments to this particular bill. That on constituting the composition of the panel, that panel, though the earlier panel that existed was ad hoc and therefore remained dissolved after carrying out its duty, even the panel we are constituting must also have a time framework so that, yes, it will carry out its duty. It can continue monitoring the events at the IEBC so that when commissioners walk in and walk out or want to walk away or want to leave the commission so that it makes the commission not carry out its functions, that panel will be available to replace. But upon the expiry of the time of the IEBC itself, that panel should also remain dissolved. This will be important to bring fresh minds, fresh people, and actually make the panel a panel that is actually dynamic and not static. Number two, the committee, as we move on with this bill to the committee stage, I would also wish that they relook at the people who have been given mandate to nominate the panelists. The Commission of Anti-Corruption, EACC, I think its mandate will be specifically to deal at looking at either the data and credentials of the people nominated and those who the panel will nominate. But it may not have a serious mandate or ground upon which to be one of the units to nominate people on this particular commission. I noticed with severe realization that possibly this is a slot that should have gone to the workers of Kenya, because they are very important people when the elections are carried out, and their voice possibly should be just heard. Maybe we shall be making this amendment, not limited to a particular group of workers, but the holistic understanding of the workers of Kenya. But I'm sure my colleagues will also be making their suggestions on this in order to bring in groups that are serious stakeholders on the same. Honorable Speaker, this is a law that is good to be made at this particular time. The reason why religious groups had a lot of many members on this panel is because we do make this law during times of crisis. And during crisis period, we tend to not trust each other on both divides, and therefore we take the burden of trust to the religious leaders. I'm very happy with the chairman that he's bringing this law at a time when the temperatures are fairly fair, so that we can make a credible law, have people who can actually do this work in a very fair atmosphere, and therefore reduction of the number of religious leaders to the number of people they are actually nominating to the panel. For me, I support fully. Though 2 is so small, and possibly at the 3rd stage, we should be able to give them an extra slot, because there are so many religious groups in this country. And some of them tend to take the quick mandal immediately this comes, and then the small ones tend to be left out. Honorable Speaker, without much ado, I would want to support this bill, and thank you for this chance.
Very well, and thank you, the member for Moaya. Before your intervention, the Honorable Member for Saku, honorable members, as we always do, is a tradition in our parliament, join me in welcoming visitors from MCK Maua School, Gembe South, Mary County, who are in the public gallery. Again, the students from Olekiane Primary, those are pupils from Olekiane Primary, Narok West constituency, Narok County, again on the public gallery. Then pupils from Late Primary School, which is Narok West, Narok County, they're all in the public gallery. And again, join me in welcoming in the speakers gallery pupils from Masiante Primary School, Baringo South constituency, which is in Baringo County. They are all welcome to observe the proceedings of the National Assembly, and members, you join me in welcoming them. Karibuni. Yes, there is an intervention, but the member for Honorable Raso, you had an intervention?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wanted to raise a matter of dressing in the House, where one honorable member, he belongs to a certain profession, but luckily before you picked him up, he has already left the chamber. So I rest my case. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So you rest your case. And who was his member? Honorable Raso, you know, when you just mention a member, it could be the Honorable Junet, who is, of course, he belongs to a profession. It could have been Honorable yourself. So who was this member? Who was left? It's good to mention the member. No, you cannot just mention a member, because everyone will be assuming himself. But it's okay anyway. Now that you know, you would have mentioned when he was here, or she was here, in matters of dress, members, you know, you are guided by our provisions of our standing order on your dressing, and that was the observation of the honorable member. The member for Suna East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this bill. Madam Speaker, first I want to thank the Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs for the efforts they have made to address this important issue for our country. Madam Speaker, on the same line, I want to oppose this bill, and oppose it completely, Madam Speaker, in the sense that, Madam Speaker, I don't think the issues contained in this bill are likely to address the issues that this country once addressed in form of electoral reforms. Madam Speaker, if you look at the provisions that have been made in this bill, in terms of the bodies that are supposed to nominate the committee that is supposed to come up with the names of commissioners, Madam Speaker, the only body that I have faith in as a person, and I think many Kenyans believe so, is the Parliamentary Service Commission. Madam Speaker, I don't think these other organizations, Public Service Commission, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Law Society of Kenya, National Gender Inequality Commission, Madam Speaker, I may say many Kenyans might have faith in them, but some Kenyans don't have faith in them. And this is the beginning of divisions again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you are saying one person nominated by the Religious Council of Kenya. These religious people are the people who gave us the commissioners that we have now. What new do you think they will bring that they did not manage to bring in the last time when they were the ones chairing that body that was vetting, that was nominating people? So, Madam Speaker, we cannot keep on repeating one mistake after the other and expect a different result. That's abnormality, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my view is the biggest or the major stakeholders in an electoral process are political parties, Madam Speaker. Those are the people an electoral body is supposed to conduct an election for them. They're not going to do an election for religious organizations. They're not going to do an election for for EACC. They are going to do election for politicians who are contesting for offices. So, Madam Speaker, I can agree the Parliamentary Service Commission, because they deal with politicians in Parliament when they are elected. So they can have a role to play. But these other commissions, Madam Speaker, I don't see any role they are playing in our politics. And if you look, these are commissions that are independent under Chapter 15 of our Constitution. But there are some of them are quasi-government, Madam Speaker. If you look at the Executive Order number 1 of the President that was released immediately after the elections, all these commissions have been placed under certain ministries, Madam Speaker, in terms of helping them execute their mandate. Some are put under the Ministry of Education, some are put under the Ministry of Justice, at the State Law Office, some have been put under Ministry of Water, depending on the function of the commission. That's why I'm saying they are independent, but they are part of government, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, it is my considered view and opinion that we can do better than this, Madam Speaker, because this is one organization that we have not gotten right for quite some time. Every election, we want a new commission. The commission that conducted 2002 elections didn't do 2007. The ones that did 2007 didn't do 2013. The ones that did 2013 didn't do 2017. So we must get this time right. Even if we are going to spend more time and interrogate the matter, Madam Speaker, it is better, we better get it right. We should not be in a hurry just to pick people from commissions. EACC send someone. Who told you have faith in EACC? LSK bring one person. Who is LSK? Me, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand what LSK is doing in Kenya. It's only lawyers who know what they're doing. So when you're telling me LSK and EACC and Public Service Commission will bring nominees to get for you names for people who will conduct you, I don't have faith in those people, Madam Speaker. And I'm speaking on behalf of the people who elected me. I'm carrying sovereign authority from people who have vested that authority in me, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, this is one issue that this country must get it right this time. And they must get it right in the sense that there must be proper consultation, there must be proper interrogation, and we must have a proper commission that Kenyans will have faith in and Kenyans will accept in the manner they conduct an election, Madam Speaker. Look at this commission now that were given to us by religious organizations. 4 of them have run away. We have 3 who have remained. Why? What the problem? Because we did it in a hurry. These commissioners came into office barely 8 months to the election, Madam Speaker. If we are taking our time and we have, and you know, these bodies are all over the world, Madam Speaker. They're not peculiar to our country only. They are electoral bodies that are conducting elections all over the world. Let us look at the best practice. Because there are countries that are conducting better elections than us. And there are countries that we are conducting better elections than them. I'm not saying that we are not conducting proper elections ourselves, but I'm saying there are countries who are doing better than us and there are countries that we are doing better than them. We must look at the best practice because these bodies are all over the world so that we see which one can do a good job for this country, Madam Speaker. Some of the reasons, Madam Speaker, why Kenyans fight all the time in our country is because of electoral issues. Disputes on elections. People feeling that maybe this election was not conducted properly, and the other people feeling this one was conducted properly. It is true that we must abide by what the Electoral Commission has done, but it is true that in the process of putting in place that body, you must strive or you must do your best to have faith and confidence of the population, Madam Speaker. If you constitute this commission in a manner that some Kenyans don't have faith in them, Madam Speaker, that is the beginning of the problem. The election is just the end results. The election is just the end of the result. What puts confidence in the minds of people of Kenya is the process of identifying the people who are going to conduct the elections. Once we get that right, the election will just be a day. I can guarantee you. People will not mind who conducts the elections, Madam Speaker. It's like devolution. I have been telling my colleagues, if devolution works the way it is required in the Constitution, and every Kenyan gets his or her money at home, in where he lives, in the villages that lives, they will not care who becomes the president of Kenya. Their issues will have been sorted at that level in their villages. Madam Speaker, they will not mind, even if disabled man like Honorable 001 becomes the president, they will say, hallelujah, he's a good man. After all, he knows how to speak. So, Madam Speaker, and he has not told me he's contesting for president, so I'm just assuming. No, he talked about one time 2042, so we'll pray for him to reach that time. So, Madam Speaker, this bill is timely, but I don't believe it has been done in a manner that will build faith and confidence in the hearts of Kenyans, Madam Speaker, to have a proper electoral body. So I would like to urge the chairman. I had requested him to stay behind a bit, but I think he has gone out for shortly. He's coming back. Madam Speaker, it is my opinion or my suggestion that we withdraw this bill. Let's do more consultation on how we are going to have a proper means and ways of coming up with an electoral body for this country, Madam Speaker. To conclude, Madam Speaker, this body, Madam Speaker, is so important that it dictates the future of our country, Madam Speaker. We have been having disputes for so long, Madam Speaker. We need to now to get out of that, Madam Speaker, that line. For our country to prosper, we must move away from electoral disputes. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I urge the chairman to withdraw this bill. Let's have proper consultation and let's come up with a proper way. And my view is, let us allow political parties to nominate people to this house, Madam Speaker. And this house vets them and looks at their suitability and gives them the mandate to come up with a proper electoral body, Madam Speaker. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I oppose.
You're on record opposing. That's a member for Sunais, Honorable Junot Sheikh. The chairman is in the house, but we know the procedures of the house. The Honorable nominated Ole Sankok David, 001.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, from the onset, just like my colleague, the Suna East MP, I do oppose this bill. Honorable Speaker, and in the same breath, I want to urge the chairman to withdraw this bill so that we can go for further consultation. Honorable Speaker, the Suna East MP said that I am disabled. I am a person with disability. And I have ability beyond disability. Again, I didn't say that I'll contest for the presidency in 2042. I said in 2032.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker.
They always say you're more able than disabled.
A person with disability,
yes.
Not a disabled person. You know, when you start with
a person with a disability,
when you start with disabled person, then you have taken the disability as the one that is more than the person himself. So you say a person with disability.
The member for Sunais has heard for himself. Carry on.
Yes, and that we have ability beyond disability. Yes, because by the way, my performance in school may have been better than you, but your performance in the field may be better than me when we are running. So you are disabled when you go to class, but I'm disabled when we go to the field. Honorable Speaker, with those, I really oppose this bill, Honorable Speaker, because for sure, this is an electoral process. An electoral process evolves around members of parliament, governors, MCAs, senators. Those are the people that will be put to test, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if then we go and bring commissions that we presume that they are independent, and that is just an assumption, commissions that have not even settled already and known their proper duties, Honorable Speaker, and who are not aware of the need of the electoral process, and who are not affected directly by the results or the end result of that particular electoral process, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if the selection panel should be there, and I believe the selection panel will be an oversight authority to the IEBC, an authority that will not only be terminated after selecting the commissioners, but be there in case of commissioners resigning the way we had the other time, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and I believe with more consultation, we can even have that selection panel being an oversight authority that will even discipline the IEBC commissioners in case they mess up, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, again, Honorable Speaker, a representation of EACC, for surely, what will they be bringing in that particular selection panel? Honorable Speaker, already the bill have forgotten a constituency, a whole constituency in this issue of the selection panel, and even in the nominees that will be sent to the president and eventually to this house. They have forgotten a constituency called persons with disability, 6.5 million of them. And in 2017, only 1.5 registered as voters against the potential 2.6 million, Honorable Speaker, because of lack of accessibility to the offices of the Electoral and Boundary Commission, lack of accessibility to the voting centers. Most of them did not register, Honorable Speaker. Some of them are visually impaired. Some of them are deaf. We don't have sign language interpreters in those polling stations, Honorable Speaker, or registration station, Honorable Speaker. We don't have information in Braille for those who are visually impaired, Honorable Speaker. That is why, instead of registering the 2.6 potential voters with disability in this country, we ended up only registering 1.5. And only 800,000 of them voted in the last election, probably because of issues of accessibility to the polling stations. And already, this bill does not mention anything about them. They mention about gender. I've seen they have mentioned about gender. They have mentioned EACC, which I don't know what they will be doing there. Gender Inequality Commission, Honorable Speaker. And yes, that is part of them. So, Honorable Speaker, I join Honorable Junet by saying that we should have more consultation. And in the process of having more consultation.
Member for, just Honorable Ole Sankok, there is an intervention. Member for Nambale? Is it an intervention or is it an expression to? Yes, what is your point of intervention?
Sir, I thought I was going to assure myself a place on the queue for contribution.
You know, Honorable Member for Nambale, you know which button to use, and the intervention is for...
Usually I do, Madam Speaker.
Very well.
I try all points possible. Sometimes it works.
You're trying to catch my eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
Order, you know the best way to do it. Just get the right in the button. The member for, the nominated member, please carry on.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. That is healthy interruption. Honorable Speaker, there is also the Kenya Society, the Kenya Human Rights Society, Honorable Speaker, Kenya Human Rights Commission, Honorable Speaker. Surely, in case of any dispute in the electoral process, in case we have any problem, some of these commissions are the commissions that we'll run to. And now, they are the ones that are selecting the commissioners, Honorable Speaker. They are bound to be having conflict of interest in case we call upon them to audit, because during the electoral process or that day of the election, we have normally people who follow up the process. And Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is one of them. The Law Society of Kenya is another one of them, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I think we should not have such commissions in this selection panel, Honorable Speaker. If we retract and rethink about this bill and more public participation is done, Honorable Speaker, we will have Council of Governors, for instance, nominating a representative, the caucus of MCA nominating a representative, Parliament being the bicameral parliament, then which have 4 slots, and so on, Honorable Speaker, so that we can have this electoral process being satisfactory to those who will be seeking that particular election. Those whose boundaries will be affected, because one of the functions of the IEBC is review of boundaries, are members of parliament, members of county assembly, senators, and governors. Honorable Speaker, if they are not satisfied, if they have any doubt, if they don't trust that particular selection panel and the commissioners, then we will be repeating what we have been witnessing as post-election violence every electoral process. Kenyans are very peaceful before any election. We live together as brothers and sisters. We share salt. We share accommodation. We love each other as Kenyans. And there is no country in the world, I can say that one without fear of contradiction, that is so peaceful than Kenya, and so democratic than Kenya. Against our neighbors who have been having a lot of civil wars, Kenya had 4 heads of states. 2 of them are alive and in retirement and living Kenya peacefully. They have handed over power in a democratic process. But simply because of the IEBC commissioners whom we don't trust, and Honorable Junet had said, those who witnessed or managed the 2013 election, 2007, they did not manage the 2013. Those ones, again, did not manage the 2017 election. And the 2017 ones are the ones we are discussing now. In 2022, they will not be there. But if we have system in place and a credible selection panel that all Kenyans trust, especially from the political class, who will be affected directly, who will be the ones that will incite or calm the electorate, then we will not go any further. But if we get that the political class are satisfied, I can assure you they will also be contented with the outcome, and Kenya will be as peaceful before and after election as we are peaceful between.
Very well. You said you're opposing? Yeah, okay. Okay, honorable members, in the normal manner and the tradition of the National Assembly, I want to take the opportunity to welcome the pupils who are sitting in the public gallery from the Achievers Academy, which is in Soti constituency, Bomet County. Number 2, pupils from AIC Kaptich Primary School, Mosop constituency, which is Nandi County. We have also pupils who are in the Speaker's Gallery, members from Cabranet SDA Academy. This is from Baringo Central constituency, which is in Baringo County. The last one is that we have pupils in the National Assembly from Ruby Craft Primary School, Karachuonyo constituency, which is in Homa Bay County. The pupils from the 4 schools are welcome to the National Assembly to observe proceedings of the Assembly. Karibuni. Next member is the member for Saku.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill on the basis that we must start somewhere in making the laws for this country. And also, we must improve on the existing laws. My clear understanding of the bill that is before this House for IEBC, actually it is about improving on the existing law. I take cognizance of the issues that have been raised by Honorable Junet, and he raised fundamental issues, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, if we say that the IEBC should be apolitical, should not take sides during an electoral contestation, and we go further to argue that it must have political representation, then of course we are shooting ourselves in the foot. On the grounds that, of course, IEBC becomes a political instrument for the parties of the time or of the day. Madam Speaker, IEBC is an important constitutional commission. It is the functions of the IEBC. That is why those of us gathered in this August Assembly are here, for the work that it has done. Madam Speaker, Article 88(4) further clearly outlays the responsibilities of the IBC. So, in my reading of the Constitution, today the reason why IBC is there is for the reasons of Article 251. That says that each commission shall consist of at least 3, but not more than 9 members. Had this particular article of our Constitution not have been built into our Constitution 2010, today it means that the IBC should not be in existence, and we should be asking ourselves, how do we conduct by-elections and other elections that are going to come about? Madam Speaker, there are issues that have been raised, and I also want to raise my voice on the same, particularly in terms of the panels, those who we think we can give responsibility to nominate the commissioners or in the nominating panel. Madam Speaker, as it were, I think this is just the second reading of this bill. If we must negotiate or we must think through what has been suggested by the Honorable Committee of Legal Affairs of this House, then I think we should give our proposals during the Committee of the Whole. Madam Speaker, some of the fundamental issues that this bill has attempted to cure is about timelines. Today, 4 commissioners are missing. It is almost going to a year. Not any attempt is being made on how they can be replaced, because there is no law in place that actually binds anybody, including this August House, on how they should be replaced. The President will do the final nomination before approval by this House. But the law that is there does not give a clear guidelines at what point will the President do that. The nominating panel is not in place. It has to be constituted. At what time will it be constituted? I think I want to thank the Honorable Committee for coming up with that. Madam Speaker, the object of this bill is actually to give legal backing to the matter of the nomination of the nominating panel. I just want to say one final thing, which I believe the committee can have a good listen and think over it. As opposed to having an IBC commission of 7 being nominated at the same time, we can have a committee of 3 and 4 that overlaps. In that case, if anything happens, when one committee's time lapses, then the committee will continue, the commission will continue to be active. As it were, the idea of having one sweep of nomination of commissioners to an extent that if all of them resign at once, because they have been actually nominated as a group, then I think at times this country faces constitutional crisis if that commission resigns at once. Finally, Madam Speaker, I strongly believe as the representative of the people of Saku, if we must have a good IEBC, we must begin to think apolitical. So long as the parties will have their hands in that commission, then I think we will be all the time be on a roller coaster to blame the wrong people for the wrong things in our election. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You support?
I support.
You support.
Thank you.
Very well, very well. The member for Kwanza is the next on my request list. The Honorable Wanyonyi Kelvin.
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Speaker. I'm looking at it very critically, and eyes are on me from our constituency and the whole country. This is a very important bill, the Amendment Bill number 35 for 2019. Madam Speaker, I think we're taking things so lightly that we can now casually, of course we are serious here in this House, talking about the amendment of this bill. Yet out there, they are pending by-elections, some of which are very unfortunate that you have heard in recent times. Madam Speaker, we should be serious as a country and take the bull by the horn and make corrections when it's supposed to. Honorable Juneta said something and I fell out of the blue. Honorable Juneta, I think, had something to say, and I would agree. We need to take this very seriously and be able to come up with a permanent selection board to be able to oversee the commissioners. Today, a year has gone with only 3 electoral commissions in place. So what next? What next if you have to have election, by-election? It's very unfortunate. We are leaders here, and everybody is actually, all eyes are focused on this House to be able to come up with a solution. A year has gone without a commission. It's supposed to be 7 at most, 9. Today there are 3. So what are you doing? This has just come. To me, I think has been ambushed because I wasn't prepared for this bill. We need to have a Kamkunji. I suggest that we can have a Kamkunji and brainstorm the issue of the election, the issue of IPC in this country. Because as it is, the stability of this country, the integrity of the election that is forthcoming, whatever, will depend on what we say here. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I believe and I pray that the rest of the members will go by what we suggest. Let's even have a Kamkunji and go through this. Take our time, 2-3 days, look at it. Let's exchange our views here. If it is that we think we should have the ACCK, Law Society of Kenya, all churches coming in with the, let's look at it exhaustively and agree. Then leaving these things pending, and God knows tomorrow we have election, and what happened? People kill each other here because we didn't do a good job in this country. Madam Speaker, I suggest that we, at the end of it all, should have a permanent selection committee or whatever that deals with any factors that can arise out of maybe death or what have you. 4 commissioners resigned and went to, I don't know where they went, and they want to come back through the, I don't know what, some of them through back to us, and we have said no, because they resigned for a reason. And some of them are very legitimate reasons. I should have had a permanent selection committee to be able to fill the cup. Madam Speaker, I think, to me, without even talking so much, we need to have at least a permanent selection committee and have a Kamkunji in this House. And even have the senators come here. We talk and find out the best way forward. Are we going to have the political parties fighting the names? Yes, we can do that. Can we have the religious leaders doing that? The bodies are there, Muslims, Catholic, Christians, what have you. They can know. So it's fine. If it's the best way of doing it, yes, let's do that. Can we have Law Society of Kenya assisting us? Yes, we can do that. But let's exhaust that option before we start now debating whether we should pass this bill, Amendment B, or not. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I think I am opposed to this amendment bill. Thank you.
Your pause. For the members who have just walked in, members, we're on motion number 11 on the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Amendment. Number 3, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019. I now give the floor to the member for Sirisia, the Honorable Waluke.
Madam Speaker, from onset, Madam Speaker, I oppose this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this House, we need to say, or this country, we need to say that enough is enough. Election, Madam Speaker, has caused deaths, even to the innocent children who are not supposed to die, Madam Speaker. But because of bad governance, because of election, because of people with interest, Madam Speaker, we have lost so many people since 2007 and partly 2017, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are not here to embrace some people, that we need to increase the selection panel from 9 to 11. And yet we are talking about reducing the wage bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in my case, Madam Speaker, I suggest that the 3 or 4 commissioners who remained, that us as a House and this House, this country, Madam Speaker, need to look for the 4 commissioners to add on those that are there, instead of wasting money, time, that are not helping this country, Madam Speaker. We cannot, Madam Speaker, you see all the time the commissioners that we select, most of them are lawyers. And now we are again proposing that we need to have
Order, the Honorable Member for Sirisia, just basically there's a point of order by the Honorable Member for Daragwa, the Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, prosecute your point of order.
Just a quick one, Madam Speaker. Asking whether if the member would remove the thing that
is out of order again?
I think it is not in order. I think the member has heard.
No,
but I don't think it is in order to speak to her.
You need to speak to the speaker. I must rule whether it's a
Yes,
point of order.
Madam Speaker, I don't think it is in order for us to make contribution on the floor while we are also eating.
Eating.
Because when you are issuing, you are eating. I mean.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Sirisia, you will be dressed that you're by the member for Daragwa.
I don't know, Madam Speaker. I think
I don't know whether it's...
he just wanted to interfere with my contribution, Madam Speaker, because now I'm better.
Now you're better.
Maybe it is my tongue, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, to continue with my contribution, Madam Speaker, why I'm opposing this bill, Madam Speaker, is that we have lost so many Kenyans because of people having interest with the IEBC. And Madam Speaker, again, every election time, we are nominating commissioners, new commissioners to head IEBC, Madam Speaker. This country, Madam Speaker, I think has a problem of finance. And to reduce the punguza mzigo, Madam Speaker, we need to limit commissioners. We need to limit the selection panel. Like here they are put from 9 to 11 without giving a proper reason why it is proposed to be increased, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker,
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Member for Sirisia, we have an intervention again by the member for Baringo North, and as a procedure of the House, I give him the mic. An opportunity to prosecute. What is out of order?
Madam Speaker, what is before the House is an amendment bill to establish a selection panel. Madam Speaker, you heard the member talking about reducing the number of commissioners, which is, Madam Speaker, completely not an issue in this amendment bill. So is it in order, Madam Chair, to mislead the House that we are discussing reduction of the number? Because what is before the House is maybe reducing the number of the selection panel, but not the commissioners, because we are not dealing with the reduction of the commissioners, it's only the issue of the selection panel number. Is it in order?
Whether it's in order to debate the wrong information or whether you wanted to give him the information?
I'm not, I think it was point of information, Madam Speaker, but it's not good information because I said that he has proposed to increase the selection panel from 9 to 11, and it is written here. So I said he should give a proper reason why he proposed to increase
very well, the chair has heard,
panel.
but member, yes, very well, the chair has heard, if that is what you had observed. But all members, let us debate from an informed point of.
And that's what we are debating on, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I finish, we need, Madam Speaker, to make sure that the people that we are nominating from the church, as the chairman or the committee have proposed, Madam Speaker, are people whom this country, Madam Speaker, have confidence in them, because we need to have confidence in the commission, so that because it is for the election of the people, Madam Speaker, because some of us, like myself, Madam Speaker, I speak this because I have been a victim where 2007 I won the election, Madam Speaker, and I did not come to Parliament. And Madam Speaker, even judiciary sometimes, Madam Speaker, also, except that we are having the new constitution, we are having the judiciary, Madam Speaker, it has changed a little bit, but if it was before, Madam Speaker, even if you file a petition, it could take even the whole 5 years. Like myself, it took the whole 5 years, Madam Speaker, just because of theft. Some commissioners collude with the relatives, and we are not here, Madam Speaker, to allow anybody with interest to be nominated to the commission of IEBC, Madam Speaker. For those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I oppose.
You oppose. Very well. This is a house of debate, honorable members. The next on my request list is the member for Diwa, Honorable Martin Owino. You take the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate this time so that I can add my voice to this. But first of all, I want to thank the chair for a lot of work you're putting into this. And Madam Speaker, this is timely. It's very timely bill, amendment bill. However, with the due respect to the chair, we have to do it rightly. And if you can remember, for the past 20 years, electoral process has brought a lot of pain to the society in this country. In last election in my constituency, I lost a lot of people through death, brutal death. And also, some became so jobless because companies slumped, the economy also went down, many were disabled, the rivalry and the enmity scaled up. If it were not for the wisdom of the president and Raila, we would be still on that path because of the botched election or mismanaged election. But it's timely because in the previous ones, we put a lot of religious leaders to be in charge. And when election is botched, in fact, it's the politicians that are mostly affected because you represent people, and when they are affected, they come to us for various reasons. So we are the stakeholders, number one, in this. I'm happy with one point that the Public Service Parliamentary Service Commission is involved because this is an umbrella for all of us. But, Madam Speaker, if you go further, public service or public servants or civil servants have conflicts. If they are involved in selection and then later on things go wrong, they are involved again, you are still having a mess in your hand. And I see the composition, why people are opposing this, Mr. Chair, the composition which you have put forward for selection, you may not get much out of the current status because some will be easily influenced anyway because they are within the system. Madam Speaker, there's a quote here which was said by Larry Sabato. Every election is determined by the people who show up. But most of our elections have been determined by the people who runs it. Quite the opposite. The reason why we are posing this, Mr. Chair, is that it needs substantive negotiations and deliberations. For example, when selecting, let me put it this way, you can't really squeeze lemon and expect to get orange juice. From the word go, if we don't get it right, for example, if we do the nomination wrong way, we'll end up with selection wrong way, appointments will be wrong people, and the election will be botched, and that will affect the judiciary, will affect the legislation because of representation, and will surely affect the governance, which is the executive. And therefore, you will have a problem. In many countries, as I was going through this, they have tried, those who are coming from authoritarian regime, they could not accept any public servant to be in that body because they were oppressing them. So they go multi-party, broad-based selection. It's a different kind of area. For example, also, if you go to Romania, in Romania, the legislators appoint the chair because they know what it is if elections goes wrong. In Australia, the head of, in our case, you'd say the chair of the IEBC is also the executive officer because sometimes it needs a hands-on operation. For example, in this house, or one of the committees, we talked about wrong procurement by the executive director without the chair knowing what is going on. So all these, Mr. Chair, Madam Speaker, I'm addressing the chair as well, but through you, we need to withdraw this bill and rethink it properly, including the roles of these people. Because in this setup, you have the secretariat this way, doing their own thing. We need to look into that. We have the chair blaming what is going on. So there's no one who is totally in charge. And with that kind of operation, obviously you cannot get the best. In other setup, the legal fraternity is very key, will be maintained, but we also have to look into logistics. It is not only the commissioners, because they are commissioners, but commissioners with which scales? Because most of elections also fail because of logistical issues, management skills, and of course, merited candidates. Madam Speaker, I don't know when we have even done the selection down the line, how we are going to elect people who can maintain integrity under pressure, because that is what has been lacking in all these selections. People who are compromised and swayed affects the outcome of election. So I want to submit to the committee that I respect what you have put forward for us, but I appeal, because this is very critical for the whole country. Let us relook this, because I know we cannot subject them to whole overhaul of what you have done for us. But if it is withdrawn, we can rethink it and come and do it better. So, Madam Speaker, with those, I oppose.
You oppose. The nominated member, Honorable Osoti Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill. From the onset, Madam Speaker, I also join my colleagues who are opposing this bill, and also call that we consider withdrawing this bill. Madam Speaker, I'm saying that because we have 3 bills before this House which have gone through first reading. There is a bill by Honorable Jude Jomo, bill number 24. There is also a bill by Honorable Kioni, bill number 30. And then there is this bill. All these 3 bills are seeking to do the same thing. They are seeking to resolve the lacuna in law in terms of the appointment of commissioners when a vacancy arises. And Madam Speaker, this actually brings to light 2 issues. One, the clear interest in resolving this problem of appointment of commissioners, especially subsequent appointment of commissioners. 2, there is the issue of how we handle legislation in this House. Madam Speaker, there must be a problem somewhere, maybe in the legal department of Parliament, because we cannot be having 3 bills, same content, coming to this House at different times. This is what we call over-legislating. So there is a problem somewhere. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, I am objecting to this bill because the issue of election is key in this country. As members have said, we have had people dying because of election in this country. And we, as a representative of the people, we need to find a solution to this problem. And this solution to this problem cannot be found by half measures, cannot be found by coming up with piecemeal legislation. We need to sit down and look at the issues around election and come up with a proper legislation to deal with this problem of election once and for all. Madam Speaker, after the election of 2007, we brought in Kriegler, who did a very wonderful report. If you go through that report, more than 60% of what was recommended in that report has not been implemented. And most of the issues raised there are actually solutions to the problems we are having in election management. Why can't we start there? And I'm challenging the chair of the Justice and Legal Affairs that I think is not proper for him to bring an amendment to IEBC Act by only highlighting one issue when we have many, many other issues that we need to look at. Madam Speaker, going to the selection panel, I want to join my colleagues who have opposed the composition of that selection panel. We have religious people, we have Law Society of Kenya, we have Public Service Commission, we have Attorney General. Madam Speaker, election in this world have become electronic. Even at IEBC, one of the problems that we had was electronic transmission of results. We cannot have people selected to go and manage our election, and they do not have an understanding of electronic management of election. I expected that one of the people to be considered on the selection panel was individuals who understand matters of IT, matters of electronic management of election. We expected to see here maybe Institute of Engineers or a professional body representing people who understand issues to do with IT. They are not represented here. So we are going to end up having the same problem we had in 2017, where the focus was on one person, a junior officer in IEBC, who was handling computers. So that is a problem that needs to be addressed here. Otherwise, one of the challenges we're having in this country, if you look at every legislation, Law Society of Kenya, Law Society of Kenya. We have other professional bodies in this country which are being ignored, like the engineers, who have a wide understanding of issues to do with the technology. We have even other people, policy people, who should also be involved. But if every legislation that we bring to this house, we are talking about lawyers, and we are talking about Public Service Commission, I think we are moving in the wrong direction as a country. So, Madam Speaker, I also want to say that one of the amendments that the committee should have looked at, and I'm glad Honorable Kioni has included in his amendment bill, is the issue of review of boundaries. Madam Speaker, Article 89, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution provides that IEBC will review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. There are challenges, there are obstacles that needs to be resolved to make this happen. For example, I think from next month, which is starting tomorrow, IEBC is supposed to start the process of boundary review by coming up with a preliminary report. But have we provided funds for this exercise to be done? What has been done so far? Have we looked at the relevant documentation to support this? The answer is no. So we need to deal with the obstacles. Otherwise, this process will also become a major election issue as we head to the election. So, Madam Speaker, I want to oppose this amendment bill on the basis that we need to have a comprehensive election management regime by looking at all the laws, relevant laws that will support having an efficient, free and fair election. But at the same time, Madam Speaker, I want to ask the committee that was appointed by former Prime Minister and the President, the Building the Bridges Initiative. You are delaying Kenyans. Please hurry up, bring a report, because one of the issues that has been identified there, 9-point agenda, is the issue of elections. Bring that report, let us look at it, let us work on the issue of elections once and for all. Madam Speaker, for those few remarks, I oppose, and I ask that this bill be withdrawn.
Very well. The member, let me hear now the member for Kitui. Let's get Kitui County Women Rep, Honorable Kasalu Mudoni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also add my voice in this amendment bill. I rise to oppose this bill. And I want to say that the election process is a very critical exercise for every country. And it's very important to have it based on the best practices that can be trusted by the other people. The principal aim of this
Give her the mic. Yes, yes.
Thank you. The principal aim of this bill is to introduce a selection panel. And while I feel it's very important to have it, as there's always need to improve and fill vacuum in our existing laws, its introduction alone cannot heal the electoral problems in this country. Madam Speaker, I feel there's need for more consultations to find out exactly what ails the electoral system in this country, and then come up with a legal framework and hence substantive amendments that will bring a seamless and trustworthy electoral process. As my colleague has said, there are issues like boundary reviews, watertight electoral transmissions, and many other obstacles that need to be looked at. And that's why, Madam Speaker, I feel this amendment is not well thought out and need not to be passed and hence withdrawn. So I oppose, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. You oppose. Let me have the member for Ingembe North, the Honorable Mauka Maure.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was just getting restless about the chorus of opposing voices on a bill that is very clear that we are trying to address a national crisis. And, Madam Speaker, it behoves leaders to understand when there is an attempt to address a crisis and when it's time to engage in talk. I want to plead with those who are saying they are opposing to invite them to actually think through what they are saying they are opposing. The JAILA committee has made an attempt to tell us that we are having a crisis, that in case you wake up you wake up tomorrow, one of those commissioners decides also to quit. You have a monument of a crisis. And that's what is only being addressed. That we need a panel, a mechanism on which to replace the quorum of at least 7 commissioners. You are not invited to overhaul the electoral process or electoral law. And we need to praise the committee and its chair for having seen that vision and brought this idea to the House. It is upon members, please, at the third reading, bring amendments, bring those agencies and individuals you want, bring those organizations that you wish, but don't attempt to say that you are throwing away this initiative. Madam Speaker, we should not fear to legislate or legislate out of fear. Those are 2 bad ideas. And for that reason, you will find that I have been myself a participant in the last 6 elections. And as members have said here, there is no election body, electoral body, which has presided over 2 elections. Cheson indeed 92. Kivoito came in. And if you follow that sequence, you find every time there is a complaint about a referee, even the ones you are going to appoint 2021 or 22, they will not present over the next one because
people don't feel comfortable about a referee who has not announced them the winner. And that is exactly what we are invited here to do. Let us try to stave a crisis when we are staring at it. That even if you bring that initiative of BBI, or this Punguza Muzigo, or the Boundaries Commission, you cannot have the 3 commissioners being assigned to go and be on the boundaries, then 3 others are running the election when they are not there. So, Madam Speaker, I want to just ask my colleagues, we navigate over this muddy water. We have a responsibility as leaders. We are here to legislate, not to run away from the legislation or to wish a withdrawal of an initiative. Let us amend the initiative. Let's tidy it up. Let's bring those ideas that we wish. And we have the numbers, and we have the brains to discern upon civilized discourse on what is right for this country. At the moment, what is not right is to assume that we are having no problem at the IEBC. It is a crisis. It is actually a motion that should have come earlier, or a bill that should have come earlier to address this crisis. And now that it has come, Madam Speaker, let us, as a House, reflect and treat this matter with the urgency that it deserves. And the only way to do it is to learn how to go through a challenge. And this is a challenge. And when you have a challenge, if you swim downstream, you are doing nothing, because even a corpse can do it. But when you swim upstream, and this is one of the moments that, Madam Speaker, I want to ask our members to just recollect themselves, to think of how we should get out of this crisis that we are in. Not to run away, not to postpone it, not to wish it away. Because any attempt to oppose this initiative is actually wishing away. Because I've seen like members actually choreographed. I oppose even without knowing the details of what they are opposing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. You're supporting.
Yes, I support.
You support. The member for Mogosho, the Honorable Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to oppose the amendments. First of all, election in Kenya has been really plagued with a lot of violence and great suspicion of IEBC. As my colleague has just said, we have lots of suspicion on the referees who conduct these elections every 5 years. And we have never got it right. Even the IEBC commissioners who resigned halfway the last elections was really a sad affair. So credible elections in Kenya is key to really getting the right leaders to lead this nation. Having the right men and women in the selection panel is very important. This panel should really be a panel which is agreed upon by a wide consensus of the society. I also believe that every year we get new members of the panel, and that also may be a problem. We may need to think about staggering this membership of panel so that at least we have half serving towards another time. As we limit, let's say they serve for 5 years, some should actually slightly go beyond that so that they can give the memory of the previous action of the panel. Therefore, there was this argument that maybe not all institutions or all interested parties may have been, in this particular proposal, in this amendment, may have excluded our society. The political parties may also be necessary to see whether they can also be considered to have at least 1 or 2 members, especially the key, I would say, political parties with parliamentary representation could probably be allowed to also nominate a member of the panel. So no necessarily, we don't have to have the 11 as such. I remember the 1997 IPPG panel, which was around 29, Madam Speaker. And at that time, there was a lot of suspicion, and there was a lot of the fact that every particular interested party felt that they needed to be represented in these panels. And I think in the election of 2002, we saw a bit of an harmonious election. There was a bit of a consensus that the elections in 2002 went very smoothly. So I think broad-based representation in the panel is very important. And therefore, the amendments which should be brought should really constitute a wide consultation. I therefore support the withdrawal of this bill, Madam Speaker, to allow for more exhaustive consultations. I beg to oppose. Thank you.
You beg to oppose. The member for Mukurwein, the Honorable Kiai Githiaka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to support the bill. Madam Speaker, the main principle of this bill is to amend the first schedule of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act so that we establish a selection panel to oversee the filling of vacant positions in the commission. What we have currently is a situation whereby the current panel did its work, and after that, it is done with the work. What we are looking to do by amending this is to have a panel that is there all the times and ensure that in case of any vacancy at the IEBC, then they are filled up as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, you realize that the Constitution of Kenya provides that the quorum for any commission is supposed to be 3. But then the enabling legislation, insofar as IEBC is concerned, is supposed to be 5. But therefore, in this situation, what happens is that the Constitution will always prevail. What we have currently is that when the IEBC has appeared before the jailer committee, they have time and again agreed with the commission's position, with the committee's position, that they can only do so much, but they cannot carry out the mandated work completely and in totality. Why? Because as 3 commissioners, all what they can do is matters administrative, but they cannot really engage on matters policy. We have critical issues that IEBC is supposed to carry out. And one of them is to manage the electoral process in this country, especially the general election. They also have other critical functions to carry out, like the intended forthcoming referendum. In a situation where we have 3 commissioners in the office, we are saying that much as it can carry out some functions, it cannot be able to effectively carry out its own mandate. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are aware of the situation that has obtained in this country about the validity or otherwise of having 3 commissioners sitting in the office. We have seen that every year, how the process is managed by IEBC will obtain in the next 5 years. It will generate either calmness or a lot of heat in the country. The main aim of this amendment is to ensure that the political temperatures in this country always remain calm. The political temperatures in this country do not escalate into what we have seen previously, that sometimes causes death of innocent citizens. We are saying that in the panel that is intended, we have tried to look for fairness and wide distribution insofar as selection of the members of that panel is concerned, to reflect the face of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, you will agree with me that IEBC is supposed to be apolitical. It is supposed to be non-partisan. And the reason why we cannot have a panel to include members of political party is to ensure that the non-partisan position of the IEBC is maintained. Not only that too, Mr. Speaker, if you are to do that, which political party do we select the panel from? Is it ODM? Is it Jubilee? Every other year when we are holding election in this country, the political parties change as fast as a lightning strike. Today you have NASA, tomorrow you have Code. We change every other day. And therefore, you cannot tell how will be the political landscape tomorrow in terms of political parties. So as a member of JLAC, it is something that we really sat down, deliberated on, and thought through. And we need to cure this cycle, violent cycle that occurs every 5 years. Members may be saying that, yes, we need to sit down, we need to discuss this issue, we need, yes, to be more inclusive, but we must start somewhere. And we are saying, as the committee involved in legal affairs of this parliament, we have set the ground, we have set the starting point. We have a starting point whereby now we can discuss the other issues that flow from there. So it is my humble submission that the malaise that has been affecting the after-election cycle every 5 years will be cured, and it needs to be cured so that going forward, election will not be seen in this country as a matter of life and death. I support.
We shall have Honorable Okuome Andipo, member for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Now, the election system in Kenya has given the country a very bad and hard time in each election year. When we are handling an issue connected with the election, I think we need to be very careful. I acknowledge that the committee did a good job. That one, there is no question about. But still, it is the question of handling the election system in piecemeal that is my concern. We need to handle the election system in total at one time so that we can marry each bit of it with the other. This, in my opinion, will be the only solution. I say this knowing that from the year 2013, Kenya has never been peaceful during the election time. By the end of each election, we remain to bury our dead. People mourn everywhere. Some remain with no home to go to. Some sleep in the street just because of the election. Why should we be a country where we begin to count our deaths even before the election? Because we know for sure that the election will leave us with the deaths. Because of this, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would say that we look at the election system, the panel which they have proposed here, the actual members of the commission, and even the system we use, like, for example, could we use biometric system in the election? Because we have tried this manual, we know what happened, it was a failure. We have tried a mixture of manual and electronic, we know what happened. So we need to go a little further. We need consultation even with countries which have been successful in conducting elections. The committee can visit those countries and borrow from them. This is a serious issue, and so when we are talking of I oppose, personally I would not say it is really opposing per se, but what it is the bill can be withdrawn for the purposes of getting it, look into all our problems in the election. One thing the committee suggests, has put down there, which is very good and I totally support, is leaving the political parties out of the panel. This is a good effort trying to give the commission its independence, which is in the Constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, personally, I do not want to say that I oppose, because I support quite a bit of it. But what I'm saying is that it should be withdrawn so that they widen the net and catch the problems we have in all aspects of the election, beginning of it up to the end of it, so that we can now, after this, face the election with a feeling that we are a happy country and a hopeful country in order that we can do well. I recall in the year 2003, when for the first time in our history, Kenya was reported to be a very optimistic country, a country that looks its future with happiness and gladness and believe everything will be well, because that election really was good and there was no problem. I wish we could have that kind of situation again in Kenya so that we can be a country that can be proud of itself. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to ask for withdrawal to make it better in order that we can pass it when it is whole and not small the way it is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Huru for order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support this proposed amendment. Mr. Speaker, this is an amendment which ought to have come earlier than today. As we speak, as we debate this particular proposed amendment, as a nation, I think we should be cognizant of the fact that we are sitting on a potential crisis. IEBC as of today has only 3 commissioners, minimum acceptable as per our constitution. And we know that IEBC is one of the constitutional commissions, according to chapter 15 of our constitution. And one of the objects of having this commission, 10 of them, along with 2 other independent offices, among many other things, is to protect sovereignty of the people. And if you look at the 10 other commissions, the one which has the most important and the most difficult task of protecting sovereignty is IEBC, because of its mandate to supervise elections. Mr. Speaker, IEBC is required to be independent from direction and controlled by any authority or person. And that is part of the reason why those members who are opposing are fearing that probably because of the composition of the selection panel, they fear that probably the appointment may be skewed in favor of probably a particular political party, and therefore they may not be that independent. I personally have those fears, but I also know that we have opportunity to propose amendments to what is being proposed at a later stage. And for that reason, I stand to support this particular amendment. Mr. Speaker, today, what has helped us is the provision of our constitution, that is Article 250, which actually requires independent commission to have a minimum of 3 commissioners and maximum of 9. And that is what has helped the 3 commissioners who are left to run the commission to carry out administrative things. And of course, they have expressed their constraints in terms of looking at policy issues. But from the time we had 4 commissioners resigning, and we are Kenyans, and we need to be very frank with ourselves. Most of those resignations were triggered politically to cripple the commissions. And before the handshake, I'm sure if we are true to ourselves, we are also aware that even our own Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs have been asking these commissioners whether truly they are able to execute their mandates and whether it is prudent for them actually to consider resigning so that the commission can be reconstituted. We live in this kind of situations. And there has not been any election result which has not been contested from the time we started multipartyism in 1992. We all desire a commission, IEBC commission, which is going to be as free, as impartial, as independent as possible. I have personally, while supporting the proposed amendments, I'm not particularly comfortable with the suggestions on how the composition of the selection panel. We are all aware that the current commissioners were selected at a very difficult time when there was a lot of tension in this country. And it was, you know, the many religious faith, religious leaders, religious agencies nominated panelists, which helped us actually to inject some aspect of trust in the process. And therefore, suggesting that we are going to limit the number of nominees by the faith-based agencies from the current 5 to 2 is something which personally I'm not comfortable with, and I'm sure probably we shall have opportunity to debate that at a later stage, because if we trust religious agencies during national crisis, there is no reason why we should water down their participation in selection of the future commissioners, because we never know. In as much as probably today the tension is not there, because thanks to His Excellency and also the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila, the handshake, which has stabilized the country, we never know what the future portends. And therefore we cannot imagine that because the crisis may not be there, we go back and probably water down the role of religious agencies. I'm comfortable with the way we used to nominate the selection panels. But one other thing which has not been factored in the old act, which we need actually to support strongly, is the aspect of timeline in terms of how the nominating bodies can submit their nominees and time frame within which the vacancies in the commission can be filled. I would like particularly to thank the 3 commissioners who have stayed put. It is their courage, that is the chairman, Professor Goulier, and Molu, Commissioner Molu, who have actually helped us to avoid crisis. You can imagine where we will be if one of them decides to resign today. If, God forbid, anything happens to any of them, to the extent that probably we shall have less than 3 commissioners. And I particularly want to pray for them so that until we find a solution to this potential crisis, God keeps them well. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support the amendment. The issues that I have said I'm not comfortable with, we shall try to see how best we can have them amended at a later stage. Thank you very much for the time to contribute to the bill, to the amendment, proposed amendment.
We shall have Honorable Oduol Obaka, member for Siaya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. One thing I would like to say is that I'm not going to say whether I support or I oppose, because I believe that consultation on this bill has not been adequately done, considering the fact that I belong to a committee which is Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee that is currently discussing this matter. Even yesterday when we met, we were talking about selection committee. We have not completed our discussions on that and made recommendations, but I do believe that there are many people or many individuals, even in this House, that are interested in making some amendments to this. And before Justice and Legal Affairs come up with it in this House, it will be necessary for them to consult with CIOC and other individuals who have this bill coming into this House. Then we can collapse all these good ideas and discuss it in this House in one big go, so that we come up with what is necessary for this country. What I oppose is the discussion of this bill in this House as at now. consultation with these bodies. But what I support is the content. So I think the two are very important, knowing what we support and what we don't support. I support the discussion and the issues being raised in the bill, but I only oppose the premature nature in which it has come to the House without consulting other people who are concerned with this. Otherwise, election in this country, I must generally say, has never been impressive because it has only led to violence and unnecessary deaths, people showing how they hate each other, a country that is supposed to be united, a country that is constantly preaching peace, love, and unity, is always at war 5 years, every 5 years. I think we all know the consequences of war, the hate that we have on tribal lines when it comes to elections, and we all wish that this country will stop that, and whatever we decide in this House should be consultative. I only wish to encourage the House to withdraw this bill right now because we have not adequately addressed issues that other people do have. My committee, CIOS, has quite some good ideas. In fact, I've already seen that there's going to be some contradictions if we do not collapse this together or if we do not discuss the matters in a unified manner. You are suggesting 9 to increase to 11 commissioners, and I don't think that is the case with CIOC. I think they've reduced the number, and much more will come. So there will be a big blunder if we do not consult. So I'm only encouraging consultation first before we come to the House to discuss this particular bill. Otherwise, what I support is what JLAC has done by bringing it into the House, but I will oppose the presentation in this House at this time before consultation with other bodies are concerned. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Honorable Mabonga Mwambu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to give my views on this amendment bill. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I wish to oppose this amendment. Mr. Speaker, elections are very critical in this country. And as you've heard from other members, that every 5 years we have a lot of destruction of properties and even lives. One thing we ought to do as a House, we need to, before even we get into the selection panel of the commissioners of this body, this important body, we need to understand that everything may actually revolve around selection, because selection is like a foundation. Because if we get the selection wrong, definitely we are going to have a very bad election and wrong results. And what results is death and destructions. You've heard from the members of Justice and Legal Committee, one saying that there is a crisis, the other one admits that there is no crisis. As far as I'm concerned, there is no crisis at the moment. And I would urge the committee to withdraw this bill and have a proper consensus with all the stakeholders. You've heard some saying that they're waiting for the report from the building preachers so that their views are co-opted. You've heard just from the member who has just spoken. That means that with all these dissenting voices from the members and other professional bodies, if they come together, we are likely to solve this problem that we are having. It's not about, Mr. Speaker, what I'm concerned, it's not about the numbers, the way they suggest. It's about the quality of men and women who will sit on this panel and secure the image of this country. Because after every 5 years, Kenya is painted very badly outside there. And it's our sole responsibility. It's, of course, a collective responsibility that we give room to other ideas. We give room and listen to other voices which are coming up with very proper suggestions that can be incorporated in this amendment and ensure that at the end of the day, come 2022, we have space between now and that time. We can definitely come up with proper suggestions that will build this nation. And then another thing, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at. It's important. Yes, the committee has done its bit. They have plodded to the floor of the House. But let them also be open. The way we are making suggestions, it does not mean that we've not understood. We know what we are talking about. All these voices we are raising, we're just raising concerns because some of us probably, maybe they just see it on screens. Some of us, we've witnessed it happening, even under our feet. So we have a sole responsibility as this House to ensure that what we are passing today, Mr. Speaker, has a lasting solution to the even generations to come. One thing we need to ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, what could have happened when you're talking of crisis now? What could have happened if all commissioners, that time when the president was waiting for the results, resigned? That was the crisis. And that is why I want actually to stand here and congratulate those men, free men, who have held on to ensure that this country moves on. Sometimes we may not see, we may only see the opposite and the negative side of a person. But those men have kept this country going. So for us to ensure that we appreciate what they're doing, let's analyze the challenges and the curbs that are there, that are existing in the commission, so that we come up with something that will secure the destiny and respect for the country. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I oppose.
Honorable Wabungu Gojiri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, this House is for making law. This House is for legislating. This House is where we solve national issues, national problems, national crises. And Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that the people who have been elected in this House have been elected to preempt crisis. Right now, IEBC has 3 commissioners. God forbid something happened to any one of them. Then we would admit we have a crisis. Mr. Speaker, when I hear my colleagues saying we do not have a crisis, it is true. Then I ask myself, are we going to wait until we have a crisis to actually do something about the IEBC? Mr. Speaker, this bill has been brought. We don't have to agree with it, all of us. But the advantage we have in this House is that in this House we can accept a bill, we can reject it, or we can amend it. I want to suggest that those who believe that there are things that are not in this bill that should be in this bill should actually now start thinking about the amendments we should be discussing. But Mr. Speaker, saying we need to throw this bill out and start all over again at a time when we are very alive to what happened just 2 years ago, when we had issues about the chairperson and how you transit from one chairperson to another one, when we have seen conflict between the chairperson and the secretary and the secretariat. This bill gives suggestions on how to solve those very real experiences that we saw that could have taken this country into conflict. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is true, the IEBC is a body that determines how our elections are run, the legitimacy of those elections, and the legitimacy of those people who are elected. Mr. Speaker, we are in this House because of that body. It is a responsibility we have to make sure that we actually are introducing a process, because we, Mr. Speaker, we also must run away from the issue of thinking about people who are in certain positions and focus on fixing the processes. When I look and I read through this bill, what I am seeing is suggestions of processes that get us people. We are depending on quality of people, but if we don't have a process that actually defines how we get that quality of people, we have a problem. I see a situation where we are being told, when do we start the process of selecting new people? How do we transition from a chairperson, in case a chairperson is unavailable, to an acting chairperson during an election? How do we ensure there's no conflict between the board and the secretariat? These are all very real things that we all lived in. We all lived through, every person who is in this House. Saw them, experienced them as recently as 2 years ago. I would suggest very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that it is our responsibility as this House to fix this bill rather than to throw it out, to amend that which we are not happy with. The other committees that have suggestions, I have heard some mention that they have suggestions that could better this bill. They need to bring those bills as amendments to this House. but it would be a big disservice to this nation if we were to say that we need to throw this bill again and start all over again. So, Mr. Speaker, I will strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Honorable Oluoch Tom, member for Madare.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me begin from the very onset by saying that my contribution to this bill is informed by my participation and membership of the Committee on Implementation of the Constitution where I sit. I would have been happy if perhaps a few things were resolved. One, and maybe this could still be done, is that where we have committees that have concurrent jurisdiction, and in this case, on this matter of IEBC, running parallel to this same process on this same issue has been both JLAC and CIOC inviting the very same team, the commissioners. The commissioners have appeared and other commissions to give input on this very same bill. We have had before situations where this House has said committees sit jointly, and that's one other opening and possibility that could have happened on a matter that is so broad and a matter that is so emotive as the conduct of election as this one. I would have been happy if this matter can be resolved. I've had my friend, good friend, Ngunjiri Wambogo, I think he's just walked out, say that this bill is capable of being amended, but respectfully, I want to draw his attention, or the attention of the House, Mr. Speaker, that this House has said before that where you want to bring an amendment, you have to restrict yourself so as not to alter the basic character and foundation. You cannot go and look for other provisions that were not subject of the basic bill that has been brought so that to bring the amendment. So I would like to suggest that the crux of the matter is this, that the issue about IEBC does not lend itself to a single issue amendment to the Election Act. The IEBC, and I'd like to draw our attention, Mr. Speaker, is one of those commissions that are required to work throughout the year after every election, other than running the general election. The IEBC is required to have been running by-elections. The IEBC is required to conduct our referendum. The IEBC is required to do continual voter registration. The IEBC is required to do many other things which it is constitutionally mandated to do under the Constitution. But we all know that immediately following the elections, the challenge to the elections, the issues that were never resolved, there were issues that were raised both in the petition that was filed about the management of the election itself, about the role of the commissioner vis-a-vis the role of the secretariat. And then immediately after the second elections of October, there was the resignation of 4 commissioners. So there are other issues other than selection panel that also lend itself to not having a single amendment to a bill bring both when we can deal with all these. There are issues about quorum, the number of commissioners. There are issues about whether to reduce the commissioners from 9 to 7, or indeed to 5. There are issues to do with the secretariat and whether we should overhaul the secretariat and have a totally new secretariat. So then I would like to respectfully submit that this bill would better have been done justice if we had either had a joint select committee of the 2 committees that have concurrent jurisdiction, and this is why, among other things, CIOC is currently considering this bill, and on the issue of the selection panel, it is suggesting that we have 9 members of the selection panel, but more importantly, the CIOC is recommending that we keep Parliament off the process of the selection panel. And there's a very good reason for this, is that IEBC will have commissioners which will require to be partisan, to be non-partisan, to be independent, and away from the influence of the main actors in the election. As members of Parliament, we are interested and we are partisan. The Constitution itself says, and I believe the Leadership and Integrity Act, that it is required that we declare conflict where we have interest. And the best practice, I think, would be that where we have interest in the outcome of something, we stay away from doing this. The second reason is this, and I think in the instance where once there was a motion and recommendations by the PAC where they recommended the removal of commissioners as a recommendation, there was a ruling of this House and the Speaker stated as follows, that this House is going, and I think these were contributions mainly made by Mr. Kaluma, and which I agreed with largely. I was initially not persuaded, but eventually I saw the logic. This House cannot sit as a judge in its own course. We are appointing select committee who will appoint commissioners. We will again sit to consider the persons that have been selected before they are appointed by the commissioners. I think there is a conflict here, and the matter would best be served if the members of Parliament would stay away from the process in terms of getting the selection panel and wait until the commissioners are appointed so that we eventually have our say before the appointment is made. So for this reason, I very reluctantly want to suggest that the mover of this bill, the chair of JLAC, steps down this bill or withdraws it so that we have a more comprehensive and consultative approach to this, a more wider approach to the election amendment and the issues of IEBC as opposed to the issue of selection panel alone. I want to address lastly the issue of the crisis. There has been a crisis and it's been there for a while, over a year now. There's been a court ruling, back and forth decisions, whether or not the IEBC commissioners, 3 commissioners could conduct the business of IEBC. Eventually, the commissioners somehow prevailed, and they have conducted part of the business of IEBC. If we have waited for over 1 year, we can wait for another 3 months so that we have a process where we can take on board not only just those views or the bill that is pending before CIOC, but also there are other initiatives out there. There is the Punguza Mizigo. I think they have tinkered with some provisions that touch on our elections. They have perhaps even reduced the number of electoral positions that we will be dealing with. How will those be dealt with when it is possible that we may tinker with the Constitution and the Elections Act itself in the manner in which we conduct our elections? So I want to suggest then that this bill in its current form is not tenable. This bill requires that we step it down and have the widest consultations possible before we can be able to have an election law that everybody has confidence in. So I very reluctantly suggest that the bill be stepped down. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall we have Honorable Musimba, Patrick?
Thank you, Speaker, for this opportunity. From the onset, I want to highlight the importance of elections in this country, and especially the electoral processes that we've experienced, in 2007, 2013, and 2017. And it has become pretty momentous to note that the lives and livelihoods of Kenyans are greatly affected by elections. And what we seek, Mr. Speaker, on a day-to-day basis, or rather when we have these elections, is to have a seamless form that leaves Kenya as a going concern and doesn't portend any sort of anxiety in the populace, in Kenyans and in the people, investors, in the people who have key things which are going on within the country. As to this election panel that we are discussing, and in the form that we are discussing it, I would simply want to highlight the fact that we as politicians can't run away from our fiduciary duty, that we are the first and foremost have to have confidence in the people we have, who are ultimately going to determine the elections that come forth. And as such, the selection panels that are going to be emanate from this process need to, what we say, beyond Caesar's wives, you know, as in above, of utmost integrity. And we must question every single element that we've put in this bill, the stakeholders who are going to nominate, AKA the Parliamentary Service Commission. What is their background? Parliamentary Service Commission is formed by the members of this House. They remain commissioners and have done an extremely good job in guiding one huge arm of the government. The Parliamentary Service Commission and the formation of the House also vets, you know, through the selection panels who are in the House, our CSs. And this is a very big job as to how we keep our economy going. What I'm alluding to, and when you have the religious people, is that they are major stakeholders in terms of peace building, in terms of keeping the momentum of elections in this nation. We as Parliament ought to completely take charge, in my opinion, of the selection process of the IEBC commissioners. Why do I say this? I say this because we've seen what the past looked like. We come in and we say we have white smoke, and this is where we've been, even in terms of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, in the big fight against corruption, which is a big issue for the progress of this nation. And how was it sorted out? The minute we had the person of Wabukala as chair, and now we've transited to the new CEO, we are seeing waters which are coming, although, I mean, nobody is saying that this is a fight which must be fought. But now coming to elections, which is where we term, and we say that political parties are major stakeholders. Why are we not there? Why are we not there yet as political parties in actually being able to come through with names that can be able to form the political parties, which you saw in 1997 with the IPPG initiative? And you look at bodies, and which I haven't seen in one of the participants, which is the committee on which brings together all the political parties, which is the CMB. They are major stakeholders, and there's no nominee from them. And these are the gaps which you're seeing. While I accept that all bills come to this House and have to go through it, we see a danger, Mr. Speaker, that once we get to the point of putting the question, and for instance, this bill gets shot down because then it doesn't have the majority voice, we will be leaving lingering questions as to how do we deal with. Because the next time we can consider this is 6 months down the road. And as the previous speaker spoke, we have always considered all bills in the committee of the whole House, so long as we are not negativing the bill. And it will be all up to the process, which will be left to the speaker, whoever is presiding over the committee of the whole House, to determine which clauses are negativing the bill and its formation and language. And this will send a very big, like almost a tremor into the nation as to where are we in terms of the selection panel. And my take is, as we move forward, Parliament, when we're talking about the Parliamentary Service Commission, has to take the foothold of considering all the political parties to say that we will draw those 4 nominees from consultation within every single political party in this country who meet under the CMB, who we are very lucky to have had our speaker, Honorable Muturi, as having been a previous chair of the same formation. And this has guided very many initiatives, so that then we have the voice of the political. But all of these people are subjected to clearances prior to them coming to be considered by each of those bodies. Because we see, like, from 4B to F, all those nominees have automatic, they're automatic to becoming panel members, and are not subjected thereof by Parliament to any vetting exercise which would ensure that they meet the thresholds of Chapter 6. And we only presume. There's no mechanism thereof to say to them that Parliament must check your nominees prior to submission to the President. And this remains a big gap which you need to look at. And as we are considering those names, we have to ask ourselves that in the current formation, do they lapse? The current chair, the current 2 commissioners who have stuck it on and said the by-elections and the other elections, because we would have had a major crisis if all those other commissioners had stepped aside. You know, what happens to the current chair? Because the transition clause is in there. It only waits for the vacancy. And the next vacancy of the chairperson or the commissioners, when it falls due, will be superseded by events of this bill getting enacted. We must come again retrospectively and look, and I've heard about the CIOC, and I think there's nothing which stops the CIOC committee from coming up with their own joint mechanisms of recommending. And the issue of saying, are you expanding from 9 to 11? I think the spirit in this house, especially now that we have all these issues to do with our budgets, we've always said that these commissioners need to reduce and need to be of part-time in nature. But nothing in this bill is suggesting that. Because we are trying to accommodate as many people, but we're not putting a minimum. I think we should get to a minimum number. If we say ably across the board, it's CRC, it's all our commissions, they need to get to a unified number. And if we are the rationale of getting the people who are going to form the selection panel to 11, then we must see a proper justification within the bill as to that extent. Mr. Speaker, and what is more emotive is if a nation can't look at itself in the mirror to decide whether we have permanency of the people who will consider our commissioners, and especially our independent commissions, and whether those independent commissions have the benefit of having permanency, so that they have institutional knowledge. Because we've seen time and time again that the executive of the commission get to override the commissioners. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to support that this bill continues in its current form, but just need to urge this House not to run away from its obligations of taking forth the challenges that is to ensuring that we own the selection panel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We shall have Honorable Menen, member for Turkana South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First and foremost, I want to support the bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill has come at the right time and at the right place. Mr. Speaker, this is the only house that is mandated by the Constitution to make laws. All the laws we have in Kenya, and even in the world, it is made actually in the Parliament. That is the role that we have been given, Mr. Speaker. So, we should actually refrain from the fears of unknown. This House is well constituted, Mr. Speaker. We have all categories, all the interest groups, all the politicians, all the lawyers, all the religious people. Mr. Speaker, this is the House that has quality, personality, that are supposed to make laws, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we cannot make laws outside this Parliament. This is where we are supposed to make laws, and we are supposed, if we find, Mr. Speaker, that this law, this bill is very important, the only thing that we are supposed to do is to mobilize ourselves so that we come here, we make amendment, we make good contents that will remain, that during this time, there are people who made this law for posterity. Mr. Speaker, before we make any law, we make law for posterity. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we make an amendment that takes care of a certain problem. It might be a crisis, it might be a problem that was experienced. Mr. Speaker, in this Kenya, we all experienced problems in election, Mr. Speaker. There are people who lost their lives because of election. Mr. Speaker, there are commissioners, sons and daughters of people who have lost their job because of either mismanaging, either because of suspicion, either because of someone failed or he did not meet his or her interest. And they lost their jobs, Mr. Speaker. And as this House, Mr. Speaker, we are here to take care of the interests, to protect all Kenyans, wherever they are, all the categories. So, Mr. Speaker, the reason why I'm saying this bill has come at the right time, Mr. Speaker, we are not supposed to make laws when we are at crisis. We are supposed to make laws, Mr. Speaker, when we are sober. We are supposed to make laws, Mr. Speaker, when we are rightly in the house to make sure when we are, in fact, Mr. Speaker, I can even argue that this is the right time that we are supposed to make laws in this house, especially this one of IEBC. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, this house is always hot between opposition and those in government, Mr. Speaker. But now, the observation we have, it is sober. It is sober, Speaker. We can agree, we can disagree, but without that hotness, without feelings. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I say this bill has come at the right time, because elections are ongoing, Mr. Speaker. There are by-elections that are being conducted, and some of these by-elections, Mr. Speaker, we do not know. Someone we might lose someone, a political leader. It's uncertainty. So we are supposed to make a law that makes sure this election continues without any problem, Mr. Speaker. And you realize, Mr. Speaker, during when more than 4 commissioners resigned, Mr. Speaker, surely, as members of parliament, when we were there, we realized there was a problem. We did not make a law that takes care of that. We realized that. Everybody, we realized, even the president, even the speaker, even as members of parliament, we were in the dilemma. And this is the right time for us actually to solve that, Mr. Speaker. And the people who have been proposed to be members of the panel, Mr. Speaker, these are people, like now, the Parliamentary Service Commission, if you say representative, we have vetted these people. While they are working there, we have already vetted them. When we say Law Society of Kenya, these are people who have already been vetted. They are people, we have respect for them. When we say religious representative, Mr. Speaker, these are the people we respect in the churches. We know there are people who are advisors, there are people who talk with God, so we have to trust them. If we don't trust them now, whom will we trust then? If you don't trust even religious representatives. Mr. Speaker, you have seen when we say one person nominating international gender and equality, these are things we have been struggling with, that we need to be gender sensitive. These are the people who need to be there so that they represent the special groups, they represent women. This one has not been there, Mr. Speaker. When we say one person nominated by Attorney General, we respect Attorney General, sincerely speaking. These are people who advise the government. So when they become a member of this panel, we have respect for them. Because these are office that is there. This is not an office which is there for 5 years. This is not an office that is not there for 3 years. This is an office that is there. A public service commission. Most of the public officers who are working now, they were actually interviewed and employed by Public Service Commission. We have respect for that. So I really give respect the committee who came with this amendment. They did the right thing, and I think, Mr. Speaker, if there is something, they have done something. They have come with an idea. Everything we see in this world, Mr. Speaker, is a manifestation of idea. They have come with an idea. This idea is good. Now, what we are supposed to do, Speaker, is to enrich. We add more, we make it better. You don't come and rubbish it as if they did not do anything. It is good we enrich an idea that has originated from us. It is not originating from West. It's originating from us. And we have to support, we have to encourage, we have to own it, that it is ours. So the moment we bring an idea of saying, we try to bring political parties. How many political parties, Mr. Speaker, do we have? We have Sisi kwa Sisi, we have what? political parties are becoming like, they are becoming so many. We cannot put them here, Mr. Speaker. How can we take interest of all the political parties? I think the bodies that have been mentioned here to us are the bodies we respect. They have dignity, they have integrity, and we respect them. Most of them are independent because, Mr. Speaker, we want this panel to be a panel that is respected, a panel of dignity, a panel of integrity. That is why we say we have to make this law, this amendment, at this right time, so that we don't run for crisis, we don't have those fears. So, Mr. Speaker, for me, I really support this bill. And, Mr. Speaker, I do not want again, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are tired of shedding blood every time there is election. Kenyans are tired of every time replacing commissioners. Every time you don't win election, you want to replace commissioners. Every time you don't win election, we are tired of that, Mr. Speaker. We want this body to be filling vacancies that arise in IEBC so that the election continues with the dignity and with the integrity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Honorable Maero, member for Butula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also add my voice to this important bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill is timely. It's timely in that it has made the House realize that there is a gap somewhere which needs to be completed. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware that IEBC commissioners resigned some years back, and the place has remained vacant. And there has been no panel that could do the recruitment of the new commissioners. That's why I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that this is timely. We need to have a panel that will look into the vacancies or the overall recruitment of IEBC commissioners. Mr. Speaker, the only observation I have, Mr. Speaker, is the criteria through which the nominees will be selected. I think the bill needs to go further to look at the criteria. We have the proposed organizations that will select the nominees. The criteria that they are required to use should also be brought out. And how these nominees will be vetted, whether by this House or by whatever group that they will come up with. It's important, Mr. Speaker, that we make it very clear. We know we have gone through a lot of problems during elections. We know we have, our people have died during elections, and this has all been because of bringing people into the system to move forward. We should not go behind. Let us use all the means that are available to this House to ensure that the IEBC commissioners or the panel that will nominate the members of the IEBC is in place, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me that chance.
Honorable Jeremiah Kioni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill or this debate. As I do so, Mr. Speaker, I think I need to say from the onset that the committee that I chair, the CIOC, Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, we have a similar bill on IEBC, and of course we'll be seeking for guidance going forward as to what we do with it, because it's also coming for second reading, perhaps next week. And that helps me to contribute to this debate by saying that it is important that we allow ourselves into this debate, Mr. Speaker. It is crucial for members of Parliament to make sure that, like others have said, instead of being dismissive of this work that has been done by JILAC, and I'm sure I think there are other two attempts to try and get the IEBC or our electoral process in some form and order. It is important that we engage in the debate and engage in it in a sober manner, knowing very well that one of the reasons why we had difficulties 2017, it is because we allowed ourselves into that debate or even constituting the IEBC too late in the day. We were trying to put commissioners into office less than 8 months before the elections took place. Really, even outside the advice that we had been given by Kriegler, that we should always try and make sure that commissioners are in office at least 24 months before the date of election. So this is a very important debate that we should have. And I see quite a number of members of Parliament have been caught by surprise. But it is best that it is good that they get surprised now than get surprised when we are just a few months before elections. Because now we have an opportunity to discuss the bill, even the issues that have been raised by members, and agree on them. One of the key things about this country, and when we approach elections, is the mistrust and the suspicion. And it's not just among us. You see it also in the US. When elections are nearing, we see the same kind of behavior with the the Democrats and the Republicans, and it is already showing in the manner that Trump and others are behaving. So, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we allow ourselves into this debate. And as we do so, it is always good to note that even after having condemned IEBC in the manner that we did, and very many people going to court and filing petitions, over 300 petitions were filed, but only 5 of them were successful. I think less than 5. I think there will be less than 5 petitions that were successful. For the reason that whether we may not be able to say it as politicians, but those whom they have contracted, like auditors, to go and audit the work they did, have really given them a good report. We were with this commission in India recently to observe the electoral process and system in India. And you could see the kind of reception that were being given and the respect that was being accorded to them. I do not want to start here and heap praise on our IEBC commissioners, but I think it is good to give them credit where it is due. And they did a good job. We had issues with it, and we were not quite happy. Quite a section of us, or many of us, may not have been very happy with the results. But they still helped us to stabilize the country, and we are where we are because of what they did, and we are moving on as a country. Mr. Speaker, it is important to hear reflect on what members are saying, that there is need for more consultation. There is need to make sure that we have more public participation. My experience with these bills is that you advertise, you put notification in the newspapers, you even use other means to try and get public participation, but the level of public participation that I am witnessing from at different times is really worrying. Say, Abofisha, it is important that we discuss these issues now. And I want to thank the JLAC committee. I also want to thank the other committee, including my committee, which has come up with this initiative, so that for starting the debate this early, when we can be able to agree and disagree, and we have time to agree and disagree until we get a workable solution. Those of us who thought that we needed to send the commissioners home in total, they need to again appreciate that the procedure of sending them home is put in the Constitution. There is no shortcut to it. These are constitution offices, and you cannot send any commissioner home by just declaring somewhere from a platform or a podium of one nature or the other. There is a procedure that is there in the Constitution And if there is anybody who would want us to do the same, they will still have to follow that procedure. And, but it is important that we make sure that we give this IEBC the mandate that the constitutional mandate, the legal mandate that is required. I have mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that those who audited the work that was done by IEBC 2017 returned very good reports. Those reports have been brought to this House. Mr. Speaker, it is important to also lead the spirit of the Constitution. When we were talking about constitutional commissions, we started with 9. And the reason why we started with 9 members in a commission was because we were trying to have that regional balance, the very elusive thing we were calling regional balance, where we thought that it will only work if one of our own is in it. We have seen that that is not the way it will work. It cannot work that way. And it is important that we start having trust in the persons that we put in these commissions. And the spirit of the Constitution is to move from 9, 10 to what needs to be in place, needs to be in place. We now have the court attempt outside there. And I want to say that some of these attempts and many other attempts will come for as long as we seated here in Parliament don't do what is expected of us.
Are there, as I said, short-term solutions to a long-term problem? I just was looking at India the other day. 1 billion people went to the vote. I haven't yet heard any problems in respect of the IEBC like we had here. Our IEBC is politically motivated. Our IEBC is politically controlled, financially controlled, and manipulated by every single politician who feels he has the quality to do this. Our IEBC is not able, it's not institutionalized. There is no real division between the board and the secretariat. Who is to do what? The chairman seems to want to be the secretariat wants to be the chair. So the issue basically is nobody knows what he is doing. And as a result of that, systems are set up, systems are taken over from other organizations. We have that Cambridge, Cambridge Analytica was adopted. We have had other issues where the IEBC have gone ahead in short term to buy things which were then thrown away or never used. So as we are looking at IEBC, we need to see how are we going to institutionalize them, how are we going to give them independence, not only financially, but also from the point of view of executive control. Who is going to be able to run that? Whether they should be in the same status as the judiciary. The judiciary is having their problems, but I think the IEBC must also be aiming to be independent. What I see as the motions and what are the proposals that I've seen from JLEC, I'm sorry, it is not the solution.
The issue of the role of IEBC is critical. IEBC in elections is so critical that we cannot really downplay it. And I like this bill not because of the details and not because of so many other things, but I like this because of the process that it started. That it has started this debate. This debate is very useful. This is the right time for it to happen. If we don't do it now and we move towards the date of election, then even the people lose objectivity, people lose sobriety, and we're going to behave like some of the last parliament that ignored or didn't see some of these small things that we are talking about. Then the next thing, Mr. Speaker, that we really need to do is these issues here that we have with the selection panel. In my view, one of the things that we could do is give them an additional mandate, such that we audit. Let's audit the electoral process. Let's audit the last 2 elections to see exactly where problems are, particularly with the Electoral Commission, because that's a big, big issue in this country. If we don't fix it, we are going to be doomed. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, that I want to propose very quickly that we need to do is that as we look at this, we'll be reminded that next year we are going to be doing something that is going to be very emotive in this country. And it is IEBC that is supposed to do it. Redrawing our constituencies after the census is going to be a very, very emotive thing. And it really needs to be brought into fore as we talk about these issues of IEBC. The earlier we bring all these things together and start looking at them at this time, the better for this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Honorable Asheri?
Thank you,
What's
Honorable Speaker.
What is out of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise on order number 95, Honorable Speaker. I've been sitting here patiently and listening to members' debate. Of course, they have contributed on both sides. There are those for and those against. And I am still aware that under the committee of the whole House, that those against will have an opportunity to amend this bill. And therefore, that's why I was going to request that you call the mover to reply. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, you know, I can't make that decision. The House will have to, I will have to determine the mood of actually the House, that the mover be now called upon to reply. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The nays clearly have it. In that case, Honorable Guge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to take a lot of time, Chief Whip. I'm just going to take 1 minute as you pleaded with me.
We have 6 minutes to...
Or 6 minutes.
To 6 minutes to 7.
I'll take 1 so that Wamoshomba can take the rest. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say that from the onset, I support the bill. At least it provides a comprehensive, very comprehensive criteria of selecting the commissioners. And again, the bill has involved so many people. So many people will be involved. I've seen government bodies, the AG will be there, professional bodies, religious organizations, which of course will be very representative of this country. The other thing, the bill is very clear on timelines. The time when the president is supposed to act, within 7 days, there are certain things he is supposed to do, which is good. Again, the bill provides when a vacancy arises or when the term of the chairperson is almost ending, a criteria has been provided of how to fill that particular vacancy. And since elections are almost near, we are now 2 years down the line, I want to propose that we take this matter seriously. Otherwise, when we get to the 3rd year, we might not be able to deal with this matter, as my colleagues have said. And with those few remarks, I support.
Time than now, when everybody is busy preparing for many other national issues that concerns the elections, concerns the referendum, concerns the national census, and the other processes that comes after such kind of national issues are tackled. I'm more concerned about what will happen after census, because I am aware that we are going to have census in this country. We might and we may have a situation where we do need to review boundaries, constituency boundaries, and for that matter, we do need a sober and a well-constituted IEBC that is going to do what the citizenry of this country, the citizens of this country expect. And more specifically, I speak from my county, Kiambu, where we have some constituencies that have quite many number of voters and so feel that they need to be taken care of by making sure that the boundaries are reconsidered. And we cannot trust people to reconsider our boundaries if they're not people of great integrity and people who have been through this national house. And for that, I do support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. There being no other interest from members to speak to this bill, we will now call the mover to reply. You, mover, you have 15 minutes, but as you know, we have only 1 minute to 7. If you are not able to take the 1 minute to conclude within the 1 minute, you still have the remainder of the time. But the floor is yours now.
Mr. Speaker, I want first of all to thank members for their contributions. There are those who supported, there are those who opposed, and Mr. Speaker, that is in order. This is a house of debate, and the House will finally have the last say. Mr. Speaker, certain issues have been raised, and now allow me to raise about 2 or 3. One is the fact that there are other proposals with the COIC and Honorable Jude Jomo in his bill, and many others, Mr. Speaker. That is in order. This bill before the House, Mr. Speaker, went through the normal process. And so, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be stopped just because there are other existing proposals in other proposed amendments. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this bill is rightly before the House. It has gone through public participation. We got comments, views from the public, which informed the decision of the House, of the committee, public participation, and so on. Mr. Speaker, this bill does not, and Mr. Speaker, I think there is a big concern and fear, listening to members, that that we are dealing with the commissioners of the IEBC. Mr. Speaker, we are merely dealing with the selection panel to interview, shortlist potential commissioners of the commission. Mr. Speaker, that is really the function we are dealing with here. The quality, the qualifications of the commissioners, Mr. Speaker, will be decided by the selection panel. And so, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Very well, Honorable Chair, you did it very well within a limited time, but that's fine. Honorable members who put in a question on that particular item until a subsequent time. Honorable members, the time being 7 p.m., this House started adjourned till Thursday, 1st August 2019 at 2:30 p.m.